We don't have quorum
Stacy?
tonight. Do we?
No.
I don't even know what the quorum is.
No.
We said we had one.
Oh, is that what it, I didn't even
We
know
have a
what it
public
was, yeah.
hearing without quorum.
So we have one.
We have two alternates here. So we do have
We
a
have
quorum,
quorum?
right?
Yep.
That's why we have alternates. Okay. Awesome. Discreetly get rid of my gum before I start. Yeah, chewing like a baseball player. At 6:31, good evening, everyone. I'm the chair of the planning board. I'll note this meeting will be held in person in the notice meeting room in conformance with New Hampshire RSA 91A. Quorum of the board's members must be physically present in the meeting room for the meeting to start and or continue. While there is a physical location to observe and listen to the meeting is also being conducted electronically. And the public can choose to attend and participate in person or by Zoom. However, if something occurs that disables access to Zoom, well, the meeting will continue regardless, and members of the public or board members using Zoom will have no recourse, unlike when we were operating under the governor's emergency orders. Choosing to use Zoom is done at the individual's risk. To participate on Zoom, use the webinar ID 860-7068-4937. And if you want to listen only, call 1-646-558-8656. Please note that all votes that are taken will be by roll call. And so let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. The meeting called to order at 6:33.
Scott McCoy,
Present.
Chris Piatti,
Present.
Chris Cheney,
Here.
Charlie St. Clair,
Here.
Stacy Susie. Here. Susan Hutchins. Here. Peter Burnett.
Here. So we have a quorum, and I think both alternates can still remain seated. And the secretary is going to be delayed, Mr. Delavecchia. So, all right then, let's see. Oh, yes, and we are live on YouTube too, in case any of you guys want to go home and watch it so that you can enjoy your favorite beverage. I know it's entertaining. The staff in attendance, we have Ms. Kalina Graham, we have Dean Trefethan, who's the planning director, and I think Rob's over there. My vision's not getting any better over time. That's Mr. Mora. So we got a full staff contingent tonight. The first item we need to talk about are the minutes. Anybody have any suggestions for changes, additions, corrections to the September minutes? Sensing none, will declare the minutes accepted and official as of today. We needed to accept the minutes from the site walk too, didn't we? Which I did not attend. You all had a chance, those of you that did the walk. Any suggestions, anything you want to add? It's good. All right. So we'll declare those minutes from the August 18th site walk accepted as well. We're going to start the evening off with a couple of presentations. That's where we discuss some proposed changes to the excuse me, the zoning ordinance. Excuse me a second. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Trefethan. This first one is about revision to accessory dwelling units, which is covered in section 231-41A of the zoning ordinance. I'll turn it over to you, Dean. Take it
Thank
away.
you, Chairman. Master Plan Steering Committee has, this has been one of the topics that has been discussed. About a month or so ago, gave staff the direction to work up some changes and how we, they did give us some little bit of direction. It wasn't just go make changes to, there was a specific things that were discussed that we wanted to change. Just to give you background on the ADU or accessory dwelling unit, some people call them in-law apartments. The ordinance was enacted in 2017 after the state legislature mandated that ADUs be permitted in every municipality. We did have a accessory apartment definition and ordinance in place at the time. It was very restrictive and very difficult to achieve one, not impossible, but difficult. The state gave three options to municipalities. The first one would be just let everybody have one if they wanted one. The second one was to allow by a conditional use permit, which would put the role into the planning board. And then the third one was to allow by special exception. We chose the special exception route, and the ZBA worked on that in end of 2016 into 2017. And the stated goal of the legislature was to help create more workforce housing and to help folks pay their property taxes. These goals are not achieved if our regulations are a hindrance, and we discussed at the master planning steering committee how some of the aspects of our present ordinance were a hindrance. And so that's where we are and why we are here today. So the proposed is easier for a homeowner to execute, but I will warn you that the text is not shorter. We'll go through that, but it's easier anyway. In a nutshell, what we're proposing to change, we're proposing to eliminate the need for the special exception process at the ZBA. And a side note to that, this eliminates notification to abutters, and that may be something that we want to discuss or consider at some point in time. The special exception process, we just like any other item before the ZBA would be notified.
Charlie,
to
would you
abutters.
tell those bikes? Oh,
Yeah, can you do anything about that, Charlie?
yeah, really.
Why are you guys stereotyping like that?
It's so easy.
So instead of the special exception process, speaking of easy, we're going to create an administrative review and approval process similar to when we have a change of use of the property from, say, a downtown store goes from a barber shop to a clothing store. That's a change of use that we do administratively. We also are proposing to allow ADUs on undersized lots currently. If the lot does not meet the minimum zoning requirement for the district that it's in, they would have to, in addition to get the special exception, they would have to get a variance from the zoning board as well. This proposal would say if it's a lot of record and you can meet the setback requirements, then we're not going to concern ourselves with the size of the lot. Also allows a slightly larger square footage for the ADU. This has been one of the things that we have found from some folks that have come in to discuss ADUs with us of why they don't go forward with it, because it was a maximum of 750 square feet. And we are also eliminating some construction design requirements that were in the ordinance. And just a quick little note, short-term lodging under the short-term lodging ordinance is not, is prohibited in either unit of a ADU or the primary residence per the STL ordinance. And the reason for that, as stated in the short-term lodging ordinance, is because the purpose of ADUs is to create workforce housing, and a short-term rental situation is contrary to that goal. Going on to page, any questions so far? Going on to page 3, we'll get into the actual ordinance, and I'm not going to read every word because, as I said, it's not short. Basically, the first section here is the table of uses. All residential zones, or all zones that currently allow residential use in them, will change from a special exception to permitted. They would still need to go through the administrative review process, but they would be permitted. Into the actual ordinance. Striking a little bit of language in the introductory paragraph there. It doesn't really change the nature of it. Going down to item number 1, just some little bit of grammatical clarification. Same thing in number 2. And by the way, strike through things we're deleting or changing, and bold is the new text that is being either added or replaced. In number 3, we are changing permanent residence to primary place of residence. The reason for that change is definition. Primary place of residence essentially means this is the place that you are registered to vote. This is where you register your cars, those kinds of things. This is where your tax bill gets sent to, as opposed to you could have a permanent place of residence in Laconia, but do all those things somewhere else and have another permanent place of residence. So we have run into this situation in a couple other aspects of our ordinance, and we'll be in to update those as well to change the definition of permanent to primary place. Moving on to number 4. Here's where we start getting into some substantial changes in the ordinance. Currently, we require that the lot meet or exceed the minimum required lot size. And if it exceeds, meets or exceeds the minimum required, then the ADU could be located in a separate structure, such as a barn or a garage or even a new structure. We're striking the requirement that the lot needs to meet or exceed. We're just going to say that if it's essentially what this boils down to is if it's a lot of record, and we will cover setbacks a little bit later, but if they meet setbacks, then they can do an ADU. Under current ordinance, unrelated to ADUs, if you have an undersized lot, you could build a garage, you could build a deck, you could put an addition on your house, you could do all of those things and not require anything other than a building permit, providing you maintain setbacks. So if it's a 10-foot side setback, as long as you have that, you could build a garage, put on a deck, et cetera, et cetera. We're viewing this as the same thing. If you're going to add some structure or add an addition or convert a garage, let's say, to an ADU, that it really, from a structure standpoint, coverage, lot coverage standpoint, it amounts to the same thing. Yes.
Do you have a copy of that page?
We only have the odd numbers.
3 and 5.
Oh,
Yeah, we're missing some pages.
sorry.
Just a paper saving, you know.
Page 2 and 4.
Okay. My apologies. We'll get that to you. Thought it was all double-sided. I guess not. Okay. Sorry.
Must be Rob's fault.
Yeah. No, I did that. That's what I get for not relying on staff. So, and then in this section, sorry, in number 4, item number 4, this is where we talk about the new structure or addition must conform to the required setbacks and green space of the respective zoning district, but will be exempt from minimum lot size requirement. So we are going from a situation where we're saying you must either meet or exceed the lot size to a situation where lot size is not a consideration. The other aspects of setbacks and coverage will still be a consideration, but not lot size. Under number 5, just a couple of little bit of wordsmithing there. We did have a discussion with Public Works concerning utilities. Their main concern 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, and now is they want to minimize the number of cuts that get made into the street pavement. So they are desiring that if someone does an ADU on their land, that they use the existing water and sewer line that's already there. Once they're on their property, if they want to stub off in some direction or something like that, then that's fine. But they're really concerned about the sidewalk and the streets. So we're just clarifying that. And then the previous talked about telephone and television utilities. which as in this day and age, television is quickly becoming an acronym or whatever the right word is. It's not an acronym, but anyway, internet would be more precise, but I don't know what it's going to be 5 years from now. So we're just saying other utilities because our main concern is water and sewer and in digging up the road. Number 6 has no changes to it. Number 7, we are clarifying the interior door requirement. If the ADU is attached to the primary residence, there must be an interior door connecting the 2 units. It can be locked. For detached accessory dwellings, obviously, there would be no connecting door, and we didn't mention anything about that previously, so we're adding that. And then we're combining number 8 and number 9 together. The previous number 8 stated that ADUs shall not have more than 2 bedrooms, shall be not less than 300 square feet, and not more than 750 square feet. And then it went into a mathematical formula that if you had a very large house and you could get a larger ADU by being 25% or less of the main house. And then the next one talks about consistent with the appearance, design, and colors of the main house. And what we've done is we've combined 8 and 9 together to basically say that the ADU shall be subsidiary in size, i.e. it should be smaller than the principal dwelling. So if you've got a 2,000 square foot house, it's got to be less than that. It's got to be actually no more than 1,000. But if you had a 1,000 square foot ranch, as an example, you could add an ADU that's almost the same size under this proposed ordinance. So the proposal is for not more than 2 bedrooms, not less than 300 square feet, and shall not exceed 1,000 square feet. So we've gone from 750 to 1,000 square feet. Again, that's addressing concerns that we've heard from people who have come in to inquire about ADUs, and their feeling is that that's just the 750 maximum was just not big enough and not worth their while to do. Because of the combination number 8 and 9, number 10, the former number 10 becomes number 9. This is where we get into some design requirements that were under the current ordinance. Talks about the main objective of this section was to try to make the ADU as invisible from the street as possible. So the entrance door, et cetera, could not be seen from the street, needed to be behind the house. We've eliminated all of that and just basically said that the ADU should not adversely affect the character of the neighborhood, add traffic or safety issues, or be a hazard or a nuisance like parts of the ordinance were. Again, going back to the concept of if you have a lot of record, you could add a garage, you could add a porch, you could add all kind of an addition to your house, and you would have none of those requirements of what it looks like from the street. And we just felt that we should apply the same standard. The new number 10 will be clarifying parking, that there needs to be at least 1 off-street parking. If someone comes in with say the maximum 1,000 square foot ADU and they've got the 2 bedrooms, we may sit down with them and say, we think you probably need to provide 2 parking spaces just to be on the safe side, but we would do that as part of the administrative review. The new number 11 talks about you can't convert it to condominium. Once again, the legislature set this up as an accessory use to a single family home. You can't do an ADU on a duplex. You can't do an ADU on a 3-family or condominium, and you therefore can't convert house ADU into a condominium type thing. Again, it goes against the stated goals as they were stated by the legislature. And then the last point is setting up the administrative review as opposed to the special exception process. So that is the proposal. Any questions on the actual ordinance itself? Kirk?
I don't know if you discussed this all. I know it's a single family home with the ADU. Was there any discussion on numbering of the accessory dwelling unit for 911 purposes?
There has not been, but that's a good point.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, chief.
I was just asking if there was any, even though this is a single family home, was there any thought given to 911 numbering? So if you were at 123 Main Street and there was an accessory dwelling unit, would less about a fire, but more ambulance, would they know that it's in the other unit?
Yeah,
Good
we'll
point.
have to,
Or they could just do 112B. or something
yeah,
like
we
that.
could do a B,
Doesn't have to be
or if,
complicated, yeah.
depending upon if there's numbers available, we might assign it a different number, but at the very least, we would add an A or a B to it or something like that.
911 would prefer you not add numbers, just to add numbers.
Right.
Because they work in footage.
Yes,
So I
We can do
would
an A
agree
or a
with them
B.
that an A or a B would be a much better.
yeah, okay, that's, we had not addressed it in the original ordinance, and with, the concept originally of a accessory apartment and then accessory dwelling is again, a lot of people view this as being an in-law apartment, and so they view it as all being one thing. But the reality is there is no requirement whatsoever that the person living in the ADU has to be a family member or anything like that. It could be anybody that you're renting it to. In our case, we are saying you can't do short-term rentals, but other than that.
I think the postal service has a problem with you simply designating another apartment in their place as B or A, because they look at 15A as a discrete address, not so much a subpart, for example, of number 15.
Yes, yeah, we would have,
You'd probably have to do a different number.
I don't know what we've done on the few that we've allowed. We'll go back and check.
No.
But that's a good point. We will certainly make a point of getting.
I know
real-
there's a couple that were old, like been here as long, for a long, long time, and they're just the address of the house, but we kind of know that
Yeah.
it's there, and that obviously, if we're adding new, it's not, might not work.
No, that's a good point. We'll make sure that we get addresses taken care of. Any other questions?
And just to be clear, when you're saying an ADU, you're not talking about adding a third apartment to a 2-apartment house, a
No.
multifamily.
The ADU applies only to single-family homes,
Okay,
regardless of the district they're in. They could be in the UC district or the commercial district. If it's a single-family home and is used as a single-family home, as opposed to a house that's been converted to an office, in which case we've changed the use to office. If it's a single-family home, you can have an ADU. Under the legislation,
I could be. your tenant.
we've added all kinds of requirements, and we're still going to have all kinds of requirements, but we're trying to make it a little less onerous.
is it your intent on page 1, subpart A, to actually make that reference to RSA 674, 71-72, 73? Or was that just for our benefit? Is that going to be part of the proposed language?
It's going to be part of the proposed language, yep, just so that people know what the legislative reference is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Are these attached or detached
They could
units?
be
or
either, they could be either.
Either.
I would say of the ones that we have approved, I would say about 2/3 have been attached. They're either converting space that already exists or they are adding an addition to the structure. I would say the other 1/3 to maybe 40% are standalone. Again, they could be new construction, or it could be that they're converting a garage or something like that to the ADU.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the board?
Or 3, actually.
Councilor Cheney?
At the beginning of page 3, we talk about this applies to rural residential, R1, R2, residential, single family, and so forth. My recollection is R1 and RR2 are 2-acre zoning. Am I correct?
They are 2-acre zoning, yes.
Which means septic issues.
Correct.
So shouldn't there be something in here that talks about
There
the
there is.
requirement that be sufficient septic?
Yep, item number 6, which is unfortunately on the even numbered page, which you don't have. If there is not municipal water or sewer, then they have to provide adequate water supply, which would be a well, or a sewage disposal service, which would be a septic system, and it would have to be sized to septic systems are based on number of bedrooms. So if they're already got a 3-bedroom house and they're going to add a 2-bedroom ADU, they better hope their septic system was a little oversized when they built it, or they may have an issue. Yes.
Under number 3 on that page, we talked about the property owner has to reside on the property. They can temporarily leave. Is there any definition of temporary? I mean,
There is not.
shouldn't there be?
We're, as in many things, our enforcement mechanism is usually the neighbors. And if someone were to leave for the winter for Florida or Arizona or wherever they go, and there's nobody in the house, then everything's fine. If they turn around and, rent that portion of the house out to someone else, or, and it could be, this is where it gets sticky sometimes, but could be somebody house sitting as a favor, but, it's the kind of thing that we would look into and see what the situation is. And one thing to note about the current ordinance, and also, well, the state law as well, but the proposed ordinance maintains it, is the person who owns the property does not have to live in the primary house. They could live in the ADU and rent out the primary house. They just have to be in one or the other as their primary place of residence.
It would seem to me, I would like to see you go back and think about the possibility of some sort of a time limit, because if you still register your car here and vote absentee, but you're gone 11 months, you're really not paying a lot of attention to the effect on neighbors, et cetera. And then on page 5, I made a note. Does the ZBA have the ability to waive any of these requirements or restrictions?
Currently,
Yes.
they, not by special exception. And under the special exception, there is 7 criteria that needs to be considered. It is somewhat subjective, and which is the kind of the primary purpose of a special exception, is that, yeah, we think you're okay with this thing. And I mean, every proposal, no matter what it is, somehow or another affects traffic or the use of water or sewer or whatever it is. But is it going to be a detrimental effect? If you're adding 1 car a day to the street, it's not. If you're adding, 5 toilet flushes a day to a house, you're not adding an issue, but it could be. So they have to take those into consideration. Now, we have had a couple of people, and some have been successful and some have not, that in addition to the special exception, they also go for a variance to get what you're talking about, to get relief from one of these aspects, one way or another. We had one that was granted that was a larger ADU than the 750 square feet. I forget the exact size, but it was like 10,000 or 1,050. And there was another one. We have one coming up this month at the ZBA. It's in the RR1 zone. It would be a 2-acre zoning. They have 1.8 acres of land, and they want to put an ADU in. So they have to get a variance and the special exception.
I think my concern is the 1 or 2 that I'm aware of that the exception was granted after the fact. The place is built, it's sitting there, and now we come in and ask.
We have had some after the fact ones. Yes.
Is
Yes.
there anything we can do in this ordinance to prevent that from happening?
Not any more so than any of our other ordinances, particularly building code, where we know of things that get built that they didn't take out a permit. We're dealing with one just the other day. So it happens.
Yeah, I'm shocked, but I'm sure it does.
Shocked.
One last thing, if I might, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
There shall be at
Counsel.
least one additional off-street parking space would be my preference to one parking space.
Yeah.
Because the owner can say, well, I gave them
Right.
the off-street one, so I'm parked out in the street, which Public Works will
Oh.
be thrilled with along about February.
We can do that with the administrative approval, that we can just specify that all parking, including the primary residence, is off-street.
Well, and on-street parking is banned in the winter anyway.
Yep.
Well, for
It's a
6
ticket
months
or
of the year,
tow.
yes, but
Whatever that's worth.
thank you. Good points.
Any other questions for Mr. Trefethan from members of the board?
So, Mr. Chairman, if the normal course here would be to refer to public hearing, if that is the wish to continue. We certainly could do that, and in the meantime, we can work up, solutions to these 2 or 3 points that have been brought up, or we can work that and present that to you next month and then recommend at that time to go to public hearing. Your choice.
Is there any rush?
Not really, no,
You don't have like a backlog of applicants or something?
nope.
Can you make the changes that Counselor Cheney and the chief asked about?
Yep.
And present them? In other words, could we vote to have a public hearing in November? But the actual final draft will be different than what we saw today?
Yeah, we could work that up with.
There's no
within
notice
a few
problem
days
there.
and get that out to everyone and publish that as part of the agenda item when we do.
Okay.
If you want to do the public hearing.
So if it is the pleasure of the board, we may vote to schedule a public hearing for November, and then that will give us and the staff an opportunity to tweak it and take into consideration our concerns.
I'll make a motion to have a public hearing next month on the ADU.
By God, we have a motion from the chief, and we have a second from Charlie. Any further discussion? All those in favor, we got to do the roll call. We don't have to do a roll call. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? The motion carries. So we'll have a public hearing, and that will be on November 1st. if I'm not mistaken. Mark that in your calendars. Kalina said 1, you said 9, I'll go with Kalina.
Good choice.
Yeah. So extensions. We have one extension before us tonight. The purpose of this section, obviously,
No, I won't.
is for the board to consider requests from applicants who previously have received approvals. They expire in a year, so they have to come back sometimes. Incidentally, I noticed at the back of our packets that there's a list of the criteria that we're supposed to be using to grant these extension requests. And I'm wondering if it was staff's intention for us to apply that standard to tonight's extension request, or whether that was merely of the educational variety.
This application and others that you have received over the past few months have reminded us that we probably need to put the policy before the board for review and whether you want to change it or not. So that was the intention of bringing it up later on. It's not our intention per se to change policy at this point in time, at this point in time in the agenda anyway.
Well, see, like, for example, the one we're looking at tonight, where it says reason for the extension, the applicant wrote, I need the extension, or words to that effect. I know that we've sometimes questioned whether they've made efforts to further the development. It occurs to me that we have approved, for years and years, extensions based on the owner waiting for the market to change or financing issues and things of that sort. And that seems to be contrary to the regulatory scheme. We want it to be, things can change an awful lot in 5-10 years. What the conditions were at the time of the original approval, if they've changed substantially, and it would affect the board's decision, I think we need to bring those up. So should we perhaps look at those now before we do the extensions, or do you want to keep this in order? This agenda of yours.
I don't think it would be fair to the applicant to change horses midstream. So I think you should stay with the present policy, however you interpret the present policy.
Well, the horse has been in our barn all along. We just
For
didn't ride it.
For tonight's hearing, and then at the end of the meeting, we can discuss what
Okay,
you want to do.
all right. So we do have an extension. It's PL 2014-0158 CUP and amended to 2014. So that was approved 7 years ago. 61 Pendleton and 205 Wentworth Cove. It's a request for an extension to construct a single-family home within the wetland buffer. And it was continued from the September 7th meeting. So what is this? The request is to November 1. Oh, to make it effective until November 1, 2022. Okay, is the applicant here?
Yes, yes.
There he is.
Good evening. My name is John Remington.
Hi,
I
John.
live at 201 Wentworth Cove Road, also 61 Pendleton.
Yeah,
And when I bought the property, the wetland setback was much less. Land was platted. When they extended the wetland to 50 feet, it made the site virtually unbuildable. So we went through the process with Steve Smith to come up with the conditions upon which we could build within 30 feet and access, and I drew a house and submitted it. And the house is the land is under contract, but probably doesn't close until May of 2023.
okay. That's a pretty long closing date on a PNS, isn't it?
They just built the house and they're got to sell some other properties to build the guest house or the house on this property.
Okay, all right. Have any of the conditions changed on the site
No, sir.
and the same neighbors?
Yes.
All right, when they come for an extension, there's no butter notice, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Have you spoken with any of the neighbors about it?
No.
No? Do you think they care?
Nope.
Okay,
My property's got, I think, has got 16 acres that's set in conservation and common land.
oh, good.
And it's part of a cluster development. So it was one of the first projects that went through with cluster
It's a
development.
beautiful neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
Okay, chief's excused. Any questions for the applicant? All right, anyone care to make a motion then?
Jeez. I make a motion that we, for PL 2014-0158 CUP, Amendment 2, 61 Pendleton, or 205 Wentworth Cove, to give them the extension that they're requesting.
Mr. St. Clair made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Counselor Cheney. Any further discussion? Sensing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And I see another unanimous vote. We'll see you soon. Well, maybe we never see you again. That would be good news, but
Thank you.
Your
Good luck.
hoping.
good luck. Okay. Now, let's see. Yes, we did get the second page of the agenda. we have a public hearing scheduled on an amendment to the zoning, another zoning amendment. It's to amend the table of permitted uses chart at 23542, adding a new section L to include indoor storage, self-services, conditional use permit in the commercial resort zone. As you may recall, at the last meeting, staff made a presentation about the apparent incongruity of allowing outdoor storage but not allowing indoor storage in an area of the city that, shall we say, has more boats per capita than many other areas of the city. So I think the purpose tonight is the public hearing that we voted to take last time. Dean, did you want to say anything before we start with that? Just to refresh the.
Just to remind the
public.
board and to inform the public, again, this is not aimed at any particular one property. This is aimed at the entire commercial resort zone, which extends from the intersection of White Oaks Road down by Shaw's, all the way up along the boulevard, and then the traditional beach area, and then also along Endicott Street north. So again, it's not about one particular property. It is about that entire zone. And as you stated, our position, staff's position, is that we feel there's a contradiction in the ordinance, in that outdoor storage, which we view as being unsightly, is allowed, and indoor self-storage is not.
And if I remember correctly, the proposal would, in the amendment, would include requirements that make the building either invisible from the road or otherwise not obvious, shall we say.
Correct. There are some architectural standards.
Yeah. Yep. So I think what I'll do is I'll open the public hearing now then. If there's anyone here that would like to speak on this proposed zoning amendment. Public hearing is opened at 7:13, Kalina. If there's anybody here that wants to talk about this zoning amendment, come on up. Identify yourself for the record.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Selling. I live in Laconia on Old North Main Street. I'm also here to represent several clients that are very satisfied with the fact that this has come into fruition. It's been long overdue. It's something that many clients have approached me and asked to do just this exact use in the zone. And we've been frustrated that it hasn't been allowed. And so it's a welcome thing. In fact, I also have here the Alfars that live at 492 Endicott Street North. They're also in favor of the use. Obviously, what they considered investment property now has a light of day, that they currently operate the paintball park up there, and now looking forward to perhaps just doing indoor storage and in outdoor storage possibility too. So I'm personally in favor of it, and they are too, and several clients will be welcome that this is coming to fruition.
Well, if they're gonna leave the paintball park there, they can just paint it camel colors, right?
Possibility.
Or,
Anything's possible.
there you go.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Selling. Good to see you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to be heard on the proposed zoning amendment regarding commercial resort storage? Good evening.
Greetings. Kay Peddler Bridges, a Wares area resident, and I'm here to represent a number of residents and businessmen who believe if they put in the storage bin, as said, it'll put a more industrial complex feeling to the resort area, and we've already lost enough of our vacation and tourist look about the Wares. So we believe it would detract from all the work we have done to bring in the beautifying the area of the Wares. Thank you.
Thank you, Bedla. Good job. We don't usually get applause. So,
I'm Porky Sarsfield. I live on Tower Street.
hi.
A specific question. I know there's property where the old slide was, the water slide,
Hmm.
still up for sale. There's the property south of Cumberland Farms that's wide open, and the drive-in theater. Because it's integral to the weirs, obviously, and critical. Are those three properties likely to have storage? I mean, if I bought that property south of Cumberland Farms, could I put storage buildings on that property?
I believe so, yes.
Could. Okay, and that's,
If this were to pass.
If this were to pass, yeah,
Were to
not,
pass.
not currently, but if this were to pass, yes.
I think anybody can visualize that and say, it's just probably not a good idea.
It's one of those things about the planning and zoning process that's constantly debated, and that is, how far do we go with mandating the aesthetics of a property? And if someone purchases a parcel, they're entitled to the highest and best use. So we weigh these concerns whenever we get the applicants before us. I can assure you, living where I live, directly adjacent to two major marinas, that I would much rather see the boats inside than outside. They quite unsightly. But yes, come on up.
Hi, Robert Ames from the Half Moon Enterprises in the Weirs. I
Good
think
evening.
that, yeah, I think that one thing that would be very good for people is to hear what the actual definition of the commercial resort district, which is where this change is proposed for. And I want to read this out loud because it's very important. Commercial resort district is primarily intended to set aside areas where establishments catering to the dining, the lodging, and recreational needs of tourists or seasonal residents may be located. Also to be permitted in this district are commercial residential uses such as garden apartments and condominiums. Development will be encouraged, which is characterized by open space, attractive landscaping, and ample off-street parking. It is anticipated that small shops and retail stores may be located within this district as they meet the intent and requirements of this chapter. I think that clearly shows a lot of things that can be done in the resort district. And I don't think that storage unit it fits in any way, shape, or form into that definition of what's desired for this particular zoning district.
Didn't the first part of it say, but read the first sentence again, the first part of the sentence again.
It intended to set aside areas where establishments catering to dining, lodging, and recreational needs of tourists
Okay.
or seasonal residents.
So wouldn't this be an infrastructure item for recreation? I mean, it's boat storage, it's,
No, because there's already a permitted use for boat storage in this zone. This is
okay,
not asking whether boat storage may or may not be used in this zone. This is for indoor self-storage, not boats. It's a totally different use from the
Okay.
one that's contemplated. This is my main point, that the storage units are not appropriate for this particular district. Now, three other points I want to make. Now, this second point is anecdotal, but I would have to say, driving around the area, that there isn't a lack of available storage units. In other words, there's sufficient supply. Up on Belmont Hill, there's a huge development of storage units that just recently opened. And there's signage saying that, come rent a unit. So I think there's plenty of supply. And I don't think there's a lot of demand in the Weirs, particularly for these types of facilities. Now, this is anecdotal. I don't have any proof of this, but this is just my feeling in general. That's my second point. My third point is, and I want to refer to a website that I found very interesting. It's by a company called the Parham Group. And what they are is a company that helps developers who want to develop self-storage facilities. And what they have said here that I found very interesting is that they have three different types of markets for these types of units. Primary, which would be in a large city. A secondary would be in a city with a population of 50,000 to 65,000. And then they have what they call rural markets, which is where the population is between 20 and 30,000. Now, the way this company looks at rural markets is that they're completely different because distance and drive time is no longer a problem. People who want to use these units don't have any problem in driving, according to this website, up to 15 miles for facilities that will offer this kind of service. So of course, the Weirs is a very small commercial resort district, maybe 1 or 2 miles in diameter. And so if people wanted to use the facility on Belmont Hill or any other, they'd be happy to drive a longer distance. So my point here is that yes, if we do need storage units, they can be located not too far from Weirs, and everybody who lives in the Weirs or recreates there can still have access to those facilities if they needed them. And the final point I'd like to make is that also on this website, they discuss for people who are developing these things, what is the demographic, what is the customer profile? And they go through a lot of things, but the most interesting thing I found was, what is the #1 customer draw? It's according to this website, 85% of all customers come from drive-by traffic. In other words, they drive by the facility, they see it, and they want to keep stuff there. So the drive-by appeal is the main appeal of these types of facilities. And when you're saying in this zoning proposal that we're going to screen these facilities and people aren't going to see them, it's directly opposite of what these developers are going to want to do. They're going to want to put these things in people's faces. They're going to want to do everything and anything they can do so people see them as they go by. So to say that you're going to be able to have this screening type of thing, I don't see it working. I frankly don't. It's just going to cause a lot of headaches. So those were my main points.
Thanks, Mr. Ames. Dean, the project that's being constructed near the intersection of Gunstock Hill Road and Old Lakeshore Road in Guilford, the clear cut there, isn't that going to be storage? Is that an expansion of storage? Because it's like behind the
town has their gas station, their gas pumps. Or Guilford has their gas pumps. Is that the? lot you're talking
no,
about?
do you know where the storage buildings are across from the airport, whatever that road is, where Guilford Home Center is? It's up in the woods behind that.
Guilford Storage. That's Guilford Storage.
Okay.
Yeah, that's across from the airport. Sorry. It's across from the airport, and they've expanded up the side of the hill. They have a lot of very big.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. I don't.
They are expanding that.
Well, Mr. Ames brings up a point, though, we're addressing a use that we're not sure the extent of the need. Are we getting a lot of
We have had,
pressure or
over the past couple of
requests?
years, we've had several requests from current property owners that would like to do this. They would not be proposing to do this if they didn't think they were going to be successful. But I hear the comments made, and they are. I'm not disputing those comments.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Mr. Chair, under this ordinance, what authority would this board have to deny an applicant to, say, build an indoor storage facility on, just as an example, the property by Cumberland Farms? What authority would this board have to deny that?
It's already a rule. The city already passed this, so it's in writing. They can't do that in that zone.
Currently,
That's correct.
under this ordinance.
Well, we'd have to change and then the city council would have to change that ordinance.
Right.
I thought this ordinance
We're not done
was,
with a public hearing here, so.
We're not done with the public hearing yet.
Oh, I know.
okay, I'm sorry.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to be heard? Hello.
My name is Allison Hildebrand, and I too live in the Weirs since 1998. I'm very passionate about it. I'm passionate about the whole area. I don't know how many of you ever get to the Weirs.
Can you speak?
I don't know how many of you ever get to the Weirs or spend time in the Weirs. Go out on the Mount Washington. I do it at least 6 times a season when everyone visits, when they're not visiting. The mail boat, amazing. It's all wonderful. It's all wonderful, wonderfully old fashioned. It's why people come here. That's our ambiance. It's what draws people. When you come in on the Mount and you see the Weirs, the train is pulling in, the Sophie Sea's coming out. You're on this beautiful boat. No one else has this. And you look out and they're all tooting their horns to each other. And you look up Tower Hill and you see the old cottages of Ames and the old arcades. And I know time changes things and someday those things might not be there. But there's this beautiful patch of land at the top of the hill that will now possibly be storage units. Seriously, or anything like that. You can't tell me that people aren't going to come through and say, what was this town thinking? There's got to be plenty of places, just like up on 106 or on the way to Tilton, 104, plenty of places that are more commercialized, that don't have the beauty that we have. And it doesn't end at the Weirs. When you drive towards Meredith, this one section they're talking about, what's nearby, Fun Spot. It's been there forever, kids and families. The go-karts are there. And then there's going to be storage units. It just doesn't make sense. You know, and a song comes to mind. Put up a parking lot, pave paradise, and put up a parking lot.
Big
Really?
Yellow Taxi,
What are we
Joni
thinking?
Mitchell, 1969.
There you go. I was in the crib, but anyway. You know, Meredith right now has this great big empty corner across from Lago. In a million years, they wouldn't dream of putting up storage units there. Wolfboro would never put up storage units anywhere where it would affect people's vacations of escaping the craziness, coming to the Weirs. And now with the way that Laconia is turning out, it's amazing. And it can all be connected and it should all be preserved and it should all be kept for the right reasons. And anything that's more commercialized, just there's other places that aren't real far away. And if somebody has a camp and doesn't have enough place to store their things, I mean, to go 15 or 20 miles is not a big deal. And I just have a quick question, and please don't be offended, but what was there first, the boat storage or you living there? Did you move there and the boat storage was already there?
Oh, I've been there since 1980. So the
Okay,
boat storage units that I'm talking about were built in my neighborhood since that time.
okay. And did that go for a town meeting or?
I don't
Right here.
recall, I don't recall
I'm just
ever getting an
curious.
abutters notice.
I'm
but
just
yeah, it
curious.
did.
And I really appreciate that we can have this town meeting and spend the time with this. But I really urge any of you to just spend some time in the Weirs. It's just not honky tonk. It's something that no one else has. And just get on a boat and just look around and just drive through the area and then picture storage units and the noise and the gates going up and down and the moving trucks coming in and the doors slamming down. It's just not the place. I'm not anti-storage units, but this is not the place. And I really appreciate your time. Come to the Weirs. By the way, the storage units, those boats are all in the water once the spring comes around. So, or most of them. So it's not, the storage unit's going to get used year round. Wintertime boat storage, and it's a lake. So people expect there to be boat storage, but they don't expect storage units. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other members? Yeah, here we go.
Good evening. Jose DeMatto's 1192 Weirs Boulevard.
Good evening.
Regarding the storage in the commercial resort zone. I feel that prime land in a commercial resort district is much better serving our city's tax base by leaving the indoor self-storage as non-permitted. Even with 75 feet minimum frontage, this does not help. The human eye can see much further than that. Complying with design and performance standards does not change what is there and the land use. There is a reason that the language in the ordinance were changed some time ago, not permitting self-storage in a commercial resort zone. And the gentleman that wanted to do it at the time could have, and we're blessed that he did not. The city's tax base can and will be much more contributed to with other buildings and or businesses of high evaluation in the commercial resort zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. All right, who's next? Come on up, sign in.
Herbert Dick with 76 Discern Avenue in the Weirs.
Welcome.
My grandparents have been coming up here since the 50s. My dad's passed away in 1768 summers in the Weirs. We didn't have self-storage.
Right.
We had condos or cabins or cottages. What about the motel and room tax? What about the meal taxes? Laconia benefits off that. I don't want to see much change coming into the Weirs. I understand it's got to evolve over the years. But at the same token, do you want to come in, for instance, to sit in my front yard and look at a storage unit? Yeah, you got the lake view, but you want to look at the back of a storage unit?
You're preaching to the choir with me.
So all I'm asking is leave it the way it is. It's been that way for multiple years.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
thanks. So Dean, you mentioned that several people have approached you about wanting to do this. We're not changing the ordinance just so one or two people could benefit, are we?
No, I mean, we're.
That's like spot zoning.
Yeah, no, it's a combination of, I mean, if one person came in and asked, or even if two people came in and asked, then you would be correct. That would be trying to serve one person, but it has been multiple property owners. And these, for the most part, have been properties that you can't see from the road. And I could assure everyone that it is not the piece of property at the top of the hill next to Cumberland Farm, because that's already under agreement, and it is not storage units that they're proposing. And the drive-in may be under agreement soon, and they are not proposing storage units. They are proposing much higher and better value use. But that still leaves a lot of different properties, and I understand the concern. And I was not here 6 years ago now when the issue originally rose up and was decided. I have been briefed on it on a number of occasions by a number of people, some in this room, that I'm fully aware of the controversy that was going on at the time and the decisions that were made. But this is like other proposals that we make to you that are in response to how can we make things better? How can we make things more streamlined? How can we service all property owners, not just one segment of property owner, better than perhaps we are currently doing? And that's not to say that every proposal is passed or accepted.
Well, there's no doubt a need for storage units. But do they have to be in the CR zone? Are they allowed in any other zones?
They are allowed in industrial zones. The industrial park off of, surrounding Lexington is pretty well full. The topology at the Lakes Region Business Park probably does not lend itself to storage units. There is a section of industrial land near the airport that potentially could be used for this type of activity.
Yeah.
Yep. There are parcels that are not in the CR zone, but the customers are in the CR zone.
Right, but it wouldn't be that much of an inconvenience, would it?
No,
If they had to
absolutely
drive
not.
up to the airport, say.
Correct. No, I agree.
Okay.
Is the public hearing closed?
Is there anyone else that would like to be heard? Come on up. Oh,
Joanne Paula, live in the Wares, been there since 1978, and I too agree with everyone opposed to this, that commercial resort is not the place for storage, any kind, boats or indoor, outdoor.
Thank you.
Okay,
Wait a minute, wait a minute, Mr. Chair.
yes, sir.
I just want to remind the speaker that this is strictly about indoor. Outdoor storage for boats is already permitted. But so that's not the question. This is strictly
Indoor,
about
but-
indoor. Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to clarify.
As I said at the outset, the idea was that it seemed incongruous to allow outdoor storage and not allow indoor storage, so. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Ed Elfar. My wife and I, Nancy, are here this evening. I want to thank everybody for coming up for the opposition.
Did you organize this group?
I do. I'm about to, and thank you all for being here. I'd like to start off by saying I approve what Mr. Selling has been saying. We've owned this land for 20 years in November. And we moved up from Boston 3 years ago, thinking we could start to develop what we own. I've gotten a lot of strikes thrown against me, which is kind of upsetting, but I've kind of rolled with the punches. Now we find out recently that there was a law that was passed for no outside storage. If you guys look around, you're going to see 7 different condominium units all around within a mile radius of where our land is. It stands to reason that they could all use some kind of storage. We're providing a location where the storage can be set in the back. No one has to see a building up front. They can rely on the sign that's visible on the street. I really think there's a need for it, whether people want it or not, or they can adjust to it or not. I think that's a matter of time. But if you really think about it, it's primarily boat storage that's out here, which is allowed on that land. We're thinking of trying to do somewhere where we can put in some inside storage, assisted inside storage. There is a terrific need for it. And all you have to do is drive around. You'll see I'm 100% on the money. Of course, we would honor the 75 feet setback, not a problem. We have plenty of room. We would comply 100% with the requirements that the development requires for us to operate under. That's not a problem. We're willing to do that.
What is the current use on your property?
I can't hear you.
What's the current use of your property?
It's primarily in current use, and we're using 2 or 3 acres for the old development that
So
was
it's
there.
basically undeveloped.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. There is a few neighbors around. I don't think they're going to see the buildings unless they happen to walk on the land and look inside and try to find, oh, where the heck did he put those buildings? That's not really a problem at this point. The natural earth tones, of course, we would comply with that. We would want that. We want it to fall into the background. I don't want it to stick out. It's not going to be purple buildings. And the height, not a problem. We can still attain what we need to do by going there with a 35-foot limitation on the height. Not a problem at all. I know there's problems. I know people don't want certain things, but you know what? It's time to move forward a little bit. There is 7 condominium developments within a 1 mile radius. You can ask any one of them. I've already checked. They all need some kind of area to put stuff away in. I happen to live in one of them. I know the space they give me is like probably 4 by 6. That's not enough to put anything in there. You can't even put your seasonal stuff in there. You put 2 or 3 air conditioners in there and a couple of chairs and it's over with. Now you've got to encroach in the neighbor space. It's time to consider it. It really is. Mr. Selling's got a good idea and I'm willing to work along with it. I'm not asking for a lot. It's within the zoning of the property. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening.
My name is Charles Carey. I live on 12 Maple Street. I bought the old Cozy Inn last year. We moved up here last year. So if this passes, can they put a storage unit anywhere in the commercial resort area?
If it meets the dimensional requirements, yes.
All right, so where I live, there's a parking lot next to me. So if that sells in 2 or 3 years, they can put a storage unit right next to my house. Right?
Well, conceivably.
Yeah. So I rent cottages too. Who's gonna rent a cottage for me with a storage unit next to them?
Listen, the Weirs is an anachronism, if you think about it. The highest and best use for that, many properties in the Weirs is a vacant lot that you can make a hell of a lot of money off on bike week,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh, I agree. But I didn't move up here to stare at a storage unit on my side yard, you know?
Yeah.
Thank
I believe that, I think what Mr. Trefethan's trying to do is to minimize the visual aspect of the
Oh, I get that.
the
but
use, and,
They're gonna have a big sign right at the street right next to my house, you know?
well, I don't know if we're gonna let them have
I
a big
understand.
sign.
But it could happen. I'm just saying.
Right.
If we let it happen now, it's gonna keep happening.
Completely understand.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? I don't think there's anybody left back there that hasn't spoken. No? Okay, well, I'm gonna close the public hearing at 7:42, and I'll yield the floor to Councilor Cheney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm horrified to tell this group this. I was in the Weirs for the first time in 1949. I'd like to tell you I was in my early 70s, but that's not the case. I was 6. I don't think the Weirs area has changed substantially since then. And I find it difficult for me personally to consider the word resort and storage units in the same
Sentence.
sentence. I also point out, as Dean has sort of alluded to, that this came before the city council before and was a lightning rod of controversy. And I'd like to avoid that going forward. We got enough other problems without that. So I'm saying up front that that I'm in opposition to this amendment to the ordinance.
Not to hold you to it, but do you think it would pass the council?
It wouldn't pass one counselor.
There is a careful answer if I ever heard one.
I like this guy.
Yeah, we're gonna keep him, all right? Okay,
I don't think I should suggest to you what the other counselors may say.
right. I'm sure that Mr. St. Clair has something to say on this.
What?
Toi.
No, I'm just listening to the public and I know Ed back there. 20 years you've had that property, you said, so that 20 years ago. So he's seen, all these things, these changes come up. And I was gonna ask Dean if this ordinance stays the same, is it written, because this I don't know, is it written enough that if somebody wanted an exception made for their particular property, is that possible? If they went before the ZBA or whoever?
They would have to get a variance.
So they could get a variance.
For the use, yeah. We have had a couple of, at least one, and I think 2 applications to the zoning board for properties that wanted to do indoor self-storage, and the zoning board denied, citing in their minds, the recent, fairly recent decision by the city council.
But nonetheless, they still have to entertain it.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean,
So-
so anybody can apply for a variance and make their argument, and
So again, I'm not Ed, but I know Ed has as he stated, a very large piece of property there that goes way back. So maybe and somebody like in his situation, being that it's way back, could go in and apply for a variance.
And then the abutters would have to be notified.
Which is fine, because he is right, he's way back here. But I'll forget Ed and just say that there are potentially pieces of property like perhaps the Paws property that is now, has outside boat storage. I don't know how far back that property goes, but perhaps that goes far enough back that they could get a variance if they wanted to put a building way back there that is not up front for everybody to see. And maybe that would still work. And that's something I think our system, the way it should be set up or is set up, is that somebody can go in and say, look, you know, I get all this, I want to work with it. Here's my situation. And I think what I want to do will work and keep everybody happy. And at least that is a crack in the door that somebody can pursue that. And I think that's a fair system. I don't, you know, if you're asking how I feel, I again agree with Councilor Cheney on this. And
now I'm worried.
yeah, I know. But no, I'm not in favor of changing this because I do remember this 6 years ago. Seems like it was longer ago. But the support from the community to have this put in writing was really quite strong, substantial. You're right. And it came not only from people from the bridge up the hill or Lakeside Avenue area, but also from property owners right down the boulevard to Lake Street, where this zone goes. So, and I think there's a lot of people tonight that probably, if they knew about this meeting, would probably be here saying the same thing, but would undoubtedly wait till it got to the council, if it goes that far, where Councilor Cheney could then hear it all again. So that's my 2 cents on
Thank
it.
you.
But I would encourage anybody to go to the ZBA to ask for a variance. And I think, knowing Ed is how I do know Ed, that he would probably make a strong case for that large piece of property he has to put something in the back there that the abutters would probably not find issue with, or probably people in this room, because it would be so far back. And that's not opening the door to other properties or anything else. It's a specific situation for a specific piece of property.
Right. So the point being that it's still possible by special exception or variance, right? Variance. And what we're proposing is to make it a permitted use on the table. So does any other member of the?
If I might just add one thing.
Of course.
The other part of my concern is, and I have to be careful here, but I've had a hard time with vague language. Some of this is vague as far as I'm concerned. You know, there's a brick fire tower that should be on one of the newer properties here in the city, but it isn't. And those are the sorts of things that worry me about this, that the 35 feet might end up being 40, and the sign the gentleman's worried about may be blinking. And, you know, I just don't want to see the character of the weirs change that much. That's all.
Yeah, well, it's too late for Lakeport.
Mr. Chair.
I just found out there's gonna be a penthouse on the top of that building.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
May I go back to?
You
my
certainly may.
question from earlier? Under this ordinance, this proposed ordinance, what authority does this board have to deny an applicant the right to construct an indoor storage wherever they want in the CR district?
It, as proposed, it's a conditional use permit, which requires
I see that in the language as.
or
with
for
the
them to come
standards.
to you, and then there are the conditions outlined, the aesthetics and the distances and the height requirements, et cetera, that are part of that conditional use. And if the planning board feels that they're not meeting those conditions, then you could deny.
What if the planning board feels it's the wrong location for that use?
That would be part of the conditional use permit. Yes.
So this board would have the authority to deny the applicant.
Yes. Not going to guarantee that you won't end up in court, but you know, yes, you would have the ability to deny
Can they?
or make suggestions, and maybe they make changes. You know, maybe there's an aspect, you know, one aspect that is the too detrimental, and that aspect could be changed, and they could revise the plan, but to directly answer your question, there are conditions proposed. The planning board would decide whether those conditions are met or not. And in more of a general term thing, location is true for any type of project, whether it be a hotel or a condominium project or a single family house. I mean, location is that the appropriate location for that use?
So that could certainly be a consideration by
Yes.
this board.
But go ahead, if it,
No, thank you.
Yes, Charlie.
thank you. I don't, with all due respect, Dean, I don't see this board for this or any other, not in my years of being on the planning board, having us being able to say to somebody, well, you know what? We just don't think this is a good spot for this. We could have done that with Barton's Motel, that property, and said, you know what? This is just not the right place to have these very large buildings. And there were people on the board that felt like that. There was certainly a lot of people that came to the public hearings about that. But we couldn't do that. We couldn't just say, you know what, this is not a good place for doing it. At least that's the way it was explained to me at the time. When people were saying, you can't just go ahead and say that if they meet all the rules, you got to let it go. All you can do is try to make sure everything is set up in a good way. But the rule is it could be this big because of this zoning, and that's it. So I don't know how this board can say, geez, the side of the hill that everybody can see from the lake is not a good place to do it, so we're not going to let you do it. I don't see how we can do that, Dean.
That's not what the ordinance says either. It just creates a process for approval similar to what we do with any conditional use permit.
Right.
But I think I'm sensing opposition, not only from the public, but from board members on this. At the risk of cutting this off or anything, I would think that we could do a number of things. We could vote this thing up, vote it down, table it. Based on what I'm hearing staff say and what Charlie's comments are, which is there's still a mechanism for the right property owner with the right property to be able to get a variance in order to do this. So, I'd entertain any of those motions at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we deny this amendment to the zoning.
So we fail to recommend it to the city council. That would be seconded by Mr. St. Clair. Oh, wait, we haven't had the vote yet.
Yeah.
Any discussion, any further discussion? Yes.
So if I understand the director correctly, there is an alternative or mechanism via the ZBA for a person interested in developing indoor storage or boat storage to gain approval through that route as opposed to something related to this proposed ordinance. They could get
The option.
request a variance.
Yeah, the option of requesting a variance is there for every property owner. They have to convince the zoning board that their proposal meets the 5 criteria that our court system has determined you need to meet to get a variance.
And I think, at least anecdotally, I believe, there's still an opportunity to do this kind of development in other areas of the city and in the surrounding community to meet the need. In other words, part of the reason that we would add a use is that there's a real identified need. But as Mr. Ames and others have pointed out, the resort, the CR's district is primarily for resort related activities. So We have a motion, we have a second. Any more discussion? Yes.
I just want to strongly encourage Ed and anybody else that fits the bill. And I publicly say that I think his property fits the bill for a variance on this, to go ahead and request that variance. I really do. And I think that would make a few big property owners help them develop or whatever it is they want to do with their property with regards to this type of business.
Yes, and as I pointed out, if someone applies for a variance, then there's certified mailings to the abutters. So the abutters would have an opportunity to object. The ones that would be most in the position to be affected by it, right?
Or approve.
Right, or approved, that's true. All right, any further discussion? Sensing none, the motion is to not refer this proposed zoning amendment to the city council. All those in favor of the motion indicate by raising their hands. Opposed?
But due to my late arrival, I didn't think I would vote.
Okay, so you're an abstention then. Well, then with the abstention, it was denied. Huh?
So there is a quorum in.
Yeah, we have a quorum. We've had a quorum all along. The motion is denied. I mean, the motion is granted and we're back to the drawing board on that zoning amendment. Thank you very much. We'll be here next month. Is it tip jar by the door? Okay. Well, gee, we got another zoning amendment here.
That was 6-0. Is that what that was? 6?
6-0.
No, 6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0. 6 and an abstention.
Can I just make a personal comment at this point?
Sure.
A couple of times I've had disagreements with Dean about things. I just want to say he shouldn't stop doing things like this, Dean. No, I'm serious. You know, I don't want you to get the idea that I don't, or Charlie, think you're wrong in bringing this up. I think these are good arguments to have. And I appreciate the fact that you're, I hate to use the word progressive, but try to move things and change things and make them better. I may not agree, but I respect you for what you've done, including on this.
Thank you.
Okay.
And
Trust me, I won't be shy.
if, Mr. Chair, if I may just say, I wonder if, if some of these property owners know they can go for a variance. I don't know, but.
When they approach us, we
do
advise them that is.
Hopefully they still will. I mean,
We've had a couple of requests.
So far.
It's possible we could have more.
Well, and he's also made his usual vague references to things yet to come, so. Dean, what is this performance zoning addition, amendment to section 235?
So performance zoning is something that we initiated, adopted 3 years ago now.
It wasn't citywide.
It is not citywide. With the 2018 master plan, land use chapter, that was one of the major recommendations, was to enact performance zoning. We did enact it for the UC zone, which is the Court Street, Union Avenue, Main Street from Union to approximately the Greek church. And then also the state school property in that adjacent area that is already under performance zoning. The recommendation also was to include, consider other parts of the city, and it specifically mentioned the Weirs as a place to consider performance zoning. Performance zoning, again, is a conditional use permit type situation. Gives the planning board great leeway in terms of providing zoning relief if you so choose, and if you believe that it is the right thing to do for, again, that property, that type of proposal, and the things that can be relieved are setbacks, density, height, parking, and a few other items. You cannot relieve wetlands or zoning or buffer areas, and you cannot relieve sign requirements. We have had 2 or 3 projects that have used performance zoning, but not in a major way. That has been to get specific things, very, in my mind anyway, minute specific things. The Elm Street project in Lakeport needed it for their front setback. Because of the way the angle of the street and the angle of their property, they could not have the required 5 feet of setback. So they came in for performance zoning on that. Other than that, they conform to all of the zoning requirements. The Barton's Motel redevelopment thought they were going to need performance zoning, and when they originally approached us, they thought they were going to take advantage of it for setback requirements. As it turned out, they kept refining their proposal, and the end result was they did not need performance zoning to do that project. And trying to remember the Opera House, yes, thank you. The Opera House, in terms of in Lakeport Square, used performance zoning to redevelop. Their primary issue was parking. Should not be a surprise to anyone. Church Street property, the redevelopment of the school is using
The former mental health center that Mr.
right,
Morissette
yeah, that
redeveloped.
too. But the former Catholic school went through performance zoning because of a couple of setback issues, and I believe they needed density for like 1 unit type thing. So it's not like somebody was allowed to have 8 units on their property and they came in and proposing 30. You know, we haven't had those kinds. Those certainly could occur under performance zoning, but we have not had those drastic types of requests. It's been more minor and technical in nature.
We limited it to the UC zone and various other
The UC
areas.
zone and around the
The old
state school
commercial,
property.
Yeah. And we did that because, at least in the urban commercial zone, because we wanted to have the ability to do creative infill and redevelopments, right?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Because we have, density requirements that could be waived in the best interest of the city as a whole, right?
We do. So just to give you an example, and I hate to use brand names, but this is one brand name that has been bantied about in rumors that may or may not be coming to Laconia, and I have no idea whether they are or they aren't, but I hear the rumors like you do. Five Guys Burger, just to use as an example. Whether you like them or not is not the issue. The issue is if they wanted to locate on Union Ave or even Court Street, which are the likely places that they would locate, obviously, because of traffic count and visibility. There is not one lot available that would accommodate the size that they need to build a building and parking, et cetera. And this would be true for many types of restaurant brands and other types of chains. However, the possibility exists that they buy multiple properties that are adjacent to one another, combine them together, and that's the thing that's envisioned under the performance zoning in the UC district.
That's exactly what
particular.
happened in Bogus Elm.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
There's a couple of properties and they put them together, right? But
So what's the need in the Weirs? What's the idea of expanding it? The whole.
The idea in our mind, staff's mind, And at the time, the Master Plan Steering Committee in 2018, in suggesting that this is a likely place that you would consider it in the future, is the type of redevelopment that is likely to occur in the Weirs may need some help from a standpoint of density or potentially height, potentially setbacks, potentially parking issues. I'll give you the example of if someone were to build a larger resort hotel that had 1 or 2 function rooms in it for weddings or whatever, the parking requirement of you got to have X number of parking for the hotel and you got to have X number of parking for the function units, it probably means you run out of space. Whereas the logical extension of that is that someone who comes for a wedding is also staying at the hotel. And so they only need 1 parking space. They don't need 2. And an operator of that kind of facility can tell you what the normal breakdown of guests versus hotel guests would likely be. So it's that kind of a thing that's driving it in my mind and in Rob's mind. I don't want to put words into his mouth, but you know, we do obviously talk considerably.
Well, you know that I was a supporter of it from the start on the Master Plan Steering Committee.
Right. So it's that kind of a thought process. To do the kind of thing that I'm talking about is very expensive. And, you know, there may be, and there is no guarantee that they have to, but there may be a need for that kind of relief or an increase in density or something of that nature, or height. And I'm not going to try to, you know, sugarcoat that. To someone who wants to build a facility that has a view, a penthouse, as you mentioned earlier, may not want to be limited to, you know, 50 or 55 feet. They may want to be able to get above the trees if that's, you know, depending upon the location of the property. But
I'm trying to figure out how to raise my house.
Again, going back to this, to the storage unit thing, there is not one particular property, you know, in mind that's driving this. It's just the desire to try to help as much as we can to facilitate development in the Weirs for the properties that are currently empty. And I think it drives everybody batty that people make more money off of an empty parking lot for 10 days out of the year than they can make doing something of a substantial development. So whatever we can do to get some of those parking lots converted to year-round businesses, I think is probably better for the city and certainly better for the Weirs.
Page 2, you have a map.
Yeah, that's the current tax increment finance district that is in
The dark
existence.
green, the areas, that's the
Yes.
TIF.
Yeah.
Okay. Is the proposal of that, you would add performance zoning to the TIF district?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a current applicant or applicants that are looking to do something there, or can you foresee a reasonable need for that? In other words, are we doing this in order to encourage the kind of development that we want to see in the commercial resort zone?
That's what we're thinking. Yes.
And the infrastructure needs to be there for that to happen, right?
Yes, it does. And in most cases, it already is. I mean, you know, water and sewer is readily available.
Well, I'm
It has
talking about
capacity.
recreational infrastructure,
That
something
too.
more than a train ride and a boat ride,
Correct.
you know, like the Wild Trail to Meredith.
Yep. All
You
of
know.
those things could be part of it. And as performance zoning, the planning board could say to a developer, yeah, we like this, but we would like you to help us with the Wild Trail, for
Yeah.
instance.
Exactly.
Sidewalks,
Or sidewalks.
God forbid.
Yes.
Yeah, well, yeah. We're gonna have some talks about that, the Capital Improvement Plan Committee on Thursday. Thursday? Yeah.
Tonight, we've heard about, a couple of properties that, and there's, I mean, I don't think it's any secret in the community. Again, I hear the same rumors that everybody else hears, but the property at the top of the hill next to Cumberland Farms, it does have a purchase and sales agreement on it. Whether that'll be executed or not, I don't know, but it does. The drive-in property has an interested buyer. I mean, that's no secret, and it's been in the newspaper, et cetera.
It's also a really important Paleo Indian site.
It is, it is. And I actually had a teleconference call this week or last week, whenever it was. Anyway.
We could, in theory,
About
require
that
the
issue.
owner to do more than just rescue archaeology there too, right?
Yeah, right.
Because of that, my understanding is that the last digs were in the 70s and they backfilled. They didn't go down below a certain level and they backfilled everything.
There are several theories about what has occurred on that property.
Well,
But
I've
I
read
can
the
assure
Bull
you
Bears report anyway.
that historical resources will enforce the law. I was on a teleconference call with them and other agencies this week or last week, whenever it was. The days fall together here. About that very subject, and that there is every intention that A, the proposed developer knows they need to do that, and B, that the state agencies are going to require them to do that. But but beyond those two high profile properties, there are other properties that are drastically underutilized in the Weirs. The former Farrell's property across the street is a 3.5 acre something or other piece of land that's used for parking during motorcycle week and some vendors. It's the former on the corner of White Oaks and Endicott East property.
We have a Watson Road project here tonight.
We do, right. And so there is plenty of opportunity in the Weirs for folks to do things with various properties that are basically empty right now.
A lot of that has to do with the weather too. Winter is tough.
I understand.
And because I know Bruce has, we've seen businesses try to be open up there all winter. And we have some businesses there now, like Tower Hill, that have attempted to buck the trend of being empty all winter. But that's a big part of it up there, when the traffic disappeared on Route 3 because of 93, that all those businesses up there suffered from that tremendously. So there is a big hump there to overcome. It's not just parking and.
Right, and some of the developments that are in the wind are more aimed at year-round type use and or residence, which is one aspect that you need to address what you're talking about, for sure.
And a lot of the residents are just summer residents.
So a lot of them are
disappear in the winter.
And a lot of the motel units, a lot of the cottages are not winterized. They couldn't be used in the winter even if there was a market for them, because they're not winterized. The water lines aren't deep enough, et cetera, et cetera. But that is slowly changing. The two former cottage colonies on Weirs Boulevard that are currently being redeveloped were, they're putting in new water lines down in the proper depth so that they can be used year-round basis.
Just depends who buys them, Dean.
Yep, yes, it does.
Yeah. Well, what does the board think we should do? We could schedule it for a public hearing, right?
That's what you're doing tonight for this. This is your second public hearing.
Oh, this is the public hearing tonight. Okay.
You got anybody for that or not?
All right, why don't we open the public hearing then, if there's no objection, at 8:15? Any members of the public, Jose?
Red Sox around.
Priorities.
I'm all for improving and more businesses to the area and making things easier for people to do, but it's a little scary when we have zoning and we have planning and we have setbacks and we have density and height and parking requirements. They all exist for a reason. And that's the abutters, and that's for the traffic and the noise and all that kind of thing. And I think it's just too much to give up. I mean, there's rules and regulations that exist. And if a business and a property can't meet the requirements, then they need to adjust it in some fashion. But I just think it's an awful lot to give up. It's hard to understand. It seems very arbitrary and a lot can just be given. I just wanted to back up a little bit also is the TIF district only being used, and why wouldn't it be the entire CR zone?
It could be, but it really was to be more, laser focused on what I would call the traditional Weirs Beach area, the part that's already fairly well developed, but does have these pockets.
It ends soon, after our property, just a couple of properties. It stops before the Nazwa. That's a huge,
Right.
commercial property that, might be interested in the developer, what would be required there that's not non-conforming grandfathered parking and stuff. And I just think, if we're gonna have performance zoning, we really might be able to look outside just the TIF district. And just another thing that I wanted to bring up is the empty lots and bike week demand. And, these empty lots are not making the money that they made in the late 90s and the early 2000s. You talk to any of the people, the parking is not there. This past year, 9 o'clock during the week, there was plenty of time to close the store. On the weekend, it was 11 o'clock. The demand is just not there. The cost of the land, the taxes that are required, the return on the investment. These are the real reasons. And Charlie touched on a really huge one, is the seasonality.
Right.
We've all been to many seasonal places, myself, and I don't think there's a more seasonal place to operate a business and try to survive than Weirs Beach in the entire country. It's such a small window of opportunity on top of the weather that he mentioned. And I think that's the true reason that a lot of things, don't work. And the performance zoning might help in some fashion, but the rules and regs already exist for density and height and parking and stuff. And it's a slippery slope. It's been used mostly for industrial. I just started to research or trying to understand what it really is all about. And it came from industrial use that's been applied. And in many instances, it could be very, very beneficial. And I'm not against it, but I think it's a slippery slope. You need to be real careful how you apply concessions to things that we already have as rules and regulations. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. Any other members of the public wish to be heard? Come on up.
I'm Jane Whitehead, 245 Pleasant Street, and I just wanted to express my concern for the archaeological traces that are poorly documented. There have been some soundings that have been done there, but it's believed to be the richest and most important site of the pre-contact period of Native American habitation in this area. And I hope that there is sufficient time. It seems like the Department of Historic Resources is involved in this. And I hope there is given sufficient time to study and document those very evanescent remains of a very important period of Laconia history.
Amen to that.
Thank you.
I'm actually a certified avocational archaeologist.
I'm actually an archaeologist.
New Hampshire Straps is when I was a student. But my point is, you're absolutely right. We have a monument at the Weirs to a surveying crew from the 1600s that decided that the northern limit of the Massachusetts Bay Colony was at the Weirs. But we don't have any kind of a monument to the people that gave us the name, because that channel before it was dredged was shallow and they built fishing weirs there. And they gathered there every summer. It was a seasonal site.
Another season.
There was excavation
Retain the
from
tradition.
UNH back in the 70s, I think it was, and it might have been Richard Colbert that was. And I've read what they did, but they didn't, they ran out of time and money and they just backfilled everything. And now I think it's under asphalt.
Yes. I
So
think so, yeah.
I think also that Mr. Trefethan has said that he's already in touch with the cultural resources people and that will be addressed. If it comes before this board, I assure you it will be.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Is there anybody else that would like to show off their avocational skills? Jose?
I want to recognize Captain Jack. It took us many years to get that Indian back on top of the Cotton Rock.
Yes, indeed.
We have some representation here.
There you go. Thank you. Completely forgot Captain Jack. All right. Anyone else would like to be heard on this issue? I'll close the public hearing at 8:21 p.m. What is the pleasure of the board?
Schedule a public hearing.
This is the public hearing.
This is the public hearing.
This is the public. Oh, that you already said that. Sorry.
I just closed the public hearing, Charlie.
That's right.
Stop smoking.
No, it's the sirens. I'm still hearing it. The chief's back now, so I'm just catching up.
You feel better now, I'm back.
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Well, he is an emergency waiting to happen, right? So
He's hoping for one so he can get out of here.
do you guys care what I think?
No.
Okay, good. Yes, Scott.
I just want to address some of the concerns of the speaker. I'm sure you've looked over the ordinance, but it does outline development criteria that this board must consider. So it's not like all of the existing requirements, ordinances involving setbacks and height and density are totally ignored. There are criteria that are laid out in the ordinance that I'm certain this board would take into consideration
Right.
if this ordinance were to be approved.
Good point. So what shall we do?
I guess I would like to hear what you have to say. I'm serious. I would
You would like to?
hear what you have to say.
Well, when we had the original discussions about performance zoning, it was explained that it would in essence shift a little bit more of the responsibility, the regulatory responsibility to this board, decreasing the caseload at the ZBA, but it would also be totally dependent upon the staff being able to negotiate, if that's the right word, and judiciously apply the leeway that they would have. Now, it's only been a couple of years and we've only approved a few projects using this method. But I think it makes good sense. It's one of the innovative land use controls that's mentioned in the zoning statute. So I think it's a good idea. And I can't see a downside. And you have to remember, whenever I talk about infrastructure, I'm not just talking about utilities. I'm talking about things like recreational trails and off-road vehicle trails, snowmobile trails. We've also had discussions that I think will lead to fruition about maybe incrementally developing Hilliard Road as a through road to all the way to Parade Road, which would open up a huge swath of land up there for development, and it would be controlled because there's public parks. I mean, there's state forests up there, there's wetlands. It seems to me that if our goal is to encourage a more judicious use of the properties that we do have left that are undeveloped, that performance zoning makes sense. And it works because we have a good board. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, I've been to the other planning boards, no offense to any of them, but many times it's like, oh, we're done yet, you know, we've gone to 11 o'clock. So that's good. So I think it's a good idea, but I don't make the motions around here.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
could you remind us, you said that we've already had a few projects where we've used this, the one that's in existence now.
right.
Can you just remind us of those projects? for the
Well,
public?
what were the ones that Dean just talked about? Certainly the one next to me,
Yeah.
Pogus
Elm
4.
Street,
Yeah.
Upper
Pogus.
House,
Yeah.
the Holy Trinity School.
Mr. Morissette's residential development on Church Street.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I believe that's it.
And none of those that I can see have been negative.
No, they've all been positive, I think, and, you know.
Well, with Jose's comments, you know, when he says slippery slope, it catches my eye or my ear. And so that's why I just
Well,
wanted
this
to hear. those.
property is kind of steep.
So I just wanted to hear a list of those projects again that we could show as an example. Of course, who knows what the board will be like 10 years from now, you know, that's always a question too. So, and I understand that.
Right. Well, 10 years from now, we'll probably have the same planning director, so it'll be.
And I'm gonna be coming in here with things that Bruce doesn't like. Yeah.
No, you won't. Because I won't be here.
Would the vice chair like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we put the performance zoning overlay district addition to the city council.
Is there a second to the vice chair's motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. McWilliams. Any further discussion?
Yes, I have one question. This goes back again to what Jose, I don't know if he's still here or not.
No, he ran off. There's something about a ball game.
He's here.
Oh, he is?
Still here, so,
Oh.
okay.
You watching the game back
I
there?
have to be careful what I say. There he is. But he did have a good point where this ends. I think he said it just a few properties past his establishment. In other words, with a TIF zone.
You're going down Weirs Boulevard, yes. Yeah, I mean, I use the TIF district boundary because it's already defined, you know, as opposed to trying to define a new one. Obviously, the TIF district could be expanded.
Does it have to go with the TIF?
Does not have to go to a TIF, no.
We could ignore the TIF.
We could, but it was an already defined, established boundary that's already recognized,
But
which
he
is why we chose, and it covers the area that, I mean, from my standpoint, I think is the target area of what we're trying to spur.
Think of the hotel example that he used, right?
And I am thinking of that, and that's
Right.
why I'm saying it when he hate to refer to Jose way back there, but the Nazwa, that property, you could go even further down towards the city property there, that on that strip of next to our 30-mile-an-hour zone for the 10,000 pedestrians across there. There's that piece of property or that particular area. So why not? Did you catch that? So why not go down a little further? Would it be a problem? Would it harm anything? Just so it wouldn't have to be revisited. It certainly wouldn't harm anything, would it? Or would it?
You're saying extend the concept of the performance zoning down
Correct.
there. No, it would not harm anything. I mean, any property, as we've seen, can be redeveloped. But those properties are already developed and including, for the most part, across the street.
Unless somebody comes along with a lot of money and says, you know what?
Absolutely. Yes, you could.
Would it be easier for us to do it now before in this motion? To just say we can make an amendment to the motion to push it down?
Well, that's
If that was
pretty
accepted.
arbitrary, right? I mean, where would we be?
Baby steps.
What would be the boundaries?
Well,
I would say that if you wanted to change the proposed boundary of the performance zoning district, that you would have to define it and then advertise it and do another public hearing, because it would be a substantial enough
Okay.
change.
And we can add to it, obviously.
You could do that at any point. in
If
time,
Hilliard,
you know.
if the Hilliard Road idea gets any traction, we'll be looking at that very
Because
carefully.
I'm looking at it, and again, let's look where the Lazy E was.
Right.
And you've got, they're chopping into the hill, they're doing all this development there. But somebody with some big money could come along and say, and make an offer and take half a mile of that lakefront.
Could.
Want to do some big thing, and that would make it easier for them. That's all.
Maybe the Christmas,
You're right. You could do
Christmas
that later.
Island.
It would, and then, just to play devil's advocate here. At some point in time, and I don't know exactly where it is, but at some point in time, in my mind anyway, you cross over from what I call the traditional Weirs Beach area into more of, yes, it's commercial resort, but it's not that high density, it's not the arcades, it's not, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
You're into more lower density. There's still motels and cottage colonies, et cetera, but it's more of a low density, quieter maybe type atmosphere. And the same thing I think is true as you go further up Endicott Street North. You get to a certain point where now you're opposite, Meredith Bridge or, that area. It's not the same. I mean, maybe 20 years from now it will be, but right now it's not, in my mind.
So, Mr. Chair, is it possible, I think Jose wants to say something, so is that okay?
Session is done, but why don't we just have this in the entire city? Why isn't the whole city just performance zone? I mean, I don't understand. Why wouldn't we?
That's a point.
Trying to make it easy for everyone to do anything they want, anywhere.
Well, not
I think the
necessarily,
motion that's pending, so,
not necessarily anything they want.
so.
I mean, the TIF district could be changed at any point. You could redefine the TIF district.
But that would,
Not this board, but
yeah,
city council.
the
but-
city council.
I
Right.
think it's logical to tie the two together too.
Certainly is a starter.
Yeah,
Do we have a second to that motion yet?
yes,
Okay.
indeed.
Yes, okay, now I remember.
Is there any further discussion or discerning questioning of staff? Sensing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. Opposed and abstained? Are you abstaining?
I'm abstaining only because I wasn't here enough to hear I don't think it's fair. I didn't hear enough
Okay.
of the public comments to.
All right, so there we go. The motion passes. Thank you. Moving along, we're finally at Chapin Terrace. PL 2021-0119 SU 62 and 78 Chapin Terrace. These are two lakefront lots. They want to change the boundary line between the two lots. And we need a motion to accept the application before we hear it. Is the application in order and ready to be?
Yes, it is.
Okay, accepted. So would someone care to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that PL 2021-0119 SU 62 and 78 Chapin Terrace be accepted.
Motion made by the vice chair. Is there a second? Second by the chief. Any discussion? Sensing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? And the ayes have it. All right. Is the applicant here?
My name is Robert Talon. I'm the land surveyor that conducted the survey and developed the plan for this.
Oh, okay. So tell us about it.
Well, basically what this was there was 3 original lots from a 1939 survey. One of those lots comprised tax map 352, lot 30111, and 2 of the lots made up lot 301-10. Same individual owns both parcels. He actually acquired 301-10 recently, with the idea is basically there's the house on each end of the 2 lots. a vacant lot, if you will, in the middle. And so what he's asking to do is to basically split the vacant lot and provide half to each. So they're more equal in size and so forth.
So, but both of the lots would be owned by the same person or entity?
At this point, yes.
So what do we do about that? I mean, don't we normally require lot mergers? No?
No.
Okay. See, show what I know.
They meet, I believe they meet all current zoning.
Yep.
Before and after. So he's basically, the breakdown on it was, excuse me, lot 31, which was the middle lot, only had 90 feet of road frontage. The other two had 100. So in doing this adjustment, we end up with 168 feet on what I'm going to call his original lot, the one he owned first.
Yep.
And that provided to 122 feet for the second property that he owned. He increases his shore frontage because he only had 100 feet to begin with. By splitting that lot, that bumps his shore frontage up to 145 feet. And the remaining, or I say remaining, the newer lot ends up with 153 feet. So he meets zoning on
Roughly.
shorefront, right?
Yeah.
Right, roughly.
Do they have any plans to do further development along the lakefront?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
Nope. Strictly, it's still residential use, I believe.
Yep.
both, So,
Yeah, well, I saw the plans in there. It looked like there was only one dock between the two lots. That was my recollection.
yeah, the second property, which is, what is it, 30110, has a very small, kind of decrepit dock in front of it at the moment. It's not very usable. It's a TLC.
I can attest to that. I've been by it many times.
Oh.
All right. Are there any questions for the applicant regarding this boundary line adjustment? Staff?
I need to do a public hearing.
Oh, we do need, that's right, 8:37. We've opened the public hearing. Are there any members of the public or butters that would like to be heard regarding this boundary line adjustment on Chapin Terrace? Anybody? And close the public hearing at 8:38. Now, Mr. Trefethan.
So this meets all the zoning requirements. There's nothing unusual here, no special requirements to consider. The property owner at the 301-11 property or the 78 Chapin does have plans for the area of the land that he's taking over, which is why he's one of the reasons that he's doing this. And also, as you may or may not know, that he has two tree houses that have been built that are, one is very near the shoreline and his current property line. The other one is partially in the 50-foot setback. We have been in the process of doing zoning violation enforcement on those tree houses. We have been waiting for DES to make a determination. And
they were developed.
They have been waiting for the determination on this property line adjustment, boundary line adjustment, to make their determination. And I believe that we received notification from them, from DES, I think it was today or yesterday at the earliest, concerning, is it today or yesterday? Yesterday, concerning their determination. And I have not had time to read their decision, but I wanted to, not a whole lot I can do until this action is taken and then we find out what we have for property lines and everything else. There is, even after this boundary line adjustment, there is enforcement that we will need to do. And we, once everybody has had their final, once DES has given their final, and once the board acts on this, then we will pursue that enforcement.
Okay. All right, this is Justin's place, right? This is Rock Show,
Yes,
both of these lots.
Yep.
Okay,
and he has a buyer for the other house already, so not that that's pertinent, but
well,
Oh, so it won't be rented.
correct.
no Airbnb. All right,
Special guest.
I know. All right, so what's the pleasure of the board?
Sounds like a win for the city. Make 3 lots into 2.
Yep,
I'll be awesome.
could be. So did you want to make a motion, Mr. Delavecchio?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we accept
Approve.
application, approve. Thank you,
Mhm.
Mr. Chair. Application PL 2021-0119 SU for the lot line adjustment.
The motion made, is there a second?
Second.
Second, and we have a second and a third. That was pretty good. Second by Stacy. Any further discussion on the motion? Sensing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Thank you. Job well done.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along. We have PL 2021-0120 SP. 674 Main Street, proposal to change the second floor commercial to 2 residential units. What a timely move. Does this need acceptance? Oh, this was continued. Oh, okay, so we're not gonna actually hear this one tonight. All right. Do we don't need a motion to do that? Make a
Yes,
motion to
please do
table.
a motion to continue. This was at the applicant's request. They were due to be in front of zoning board last month, and they had a personal emergency and they could not meet that meeting. So they're going to be before the ZBA this month. So they need that approval
Okay,
essentially first. So that's why they're asking for the
so
delay.
it's been accepted and we can just table it to the next or continue the public hearing until the November 1st meeting, right?
Yes.
All right,
And we have a correction on that, just so that it is November 9th. It will be November 9th.
I wondered about that, yeah.
Oh, it is now?
That's good. Now you
well,
can-
that changes everything. I'm going home.
The campaign parties can.
Okay,
The
so,
normal meeting day is election day. You don't want to be in this building on election day, so.
yeah, that's true. All right. Any other discussion on this? Anybody want to move this thing forward?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that PL 2021-0120 SP 674 Main Street be tabled to November 9th.
Motion made by the vice chair. Is there a second? Second from Representative St. Clair. Any further discussion? Sensing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right. On to Watson Road. No, yes. We need a motion to accept PL 2021-0122 SP 1065 Watson Road. Is it in order and ready for acceptance?
Yes.
All right. Pleasure of the board.
Motion to accept PL 2021-0122 SP 1065 Watson Road.
Motion made by the chief. Is there a second? Second by the vice chair. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? All right, it's been accepted. And we hear from the applicant. I have to say, I was impressed with the number of white beards in this building.
I'm Vinnie Hayhurst. I own 1065 Watson. I'd like to change that over from a bar room, restaurant, I guess you'd call it, to a multifamily.
Seems like we saw the floor plan and all. It seems like a good move.
I hope so.
It was Originally Tony Ruse. What was it? La Cipollino or something? It was an Italian restaurant many years ago when it was first built.
I don't know much about it.
Well, I'm old and I've lived here all my life, so I have nothing but memories. Is the board members have any questions for the app?
Yes.
Okay.
On one of the planning conditions, if a dumpster is used, how is the trash currently done?
It's a vacant bar right now. It's a
Oh,
vacant
got ya.
property. So I would expect I would get a dumpster, surround that with fencing.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Yes, Scott.
If I'm reading the floor plan correctly, this would be 4 2-bedroom units. and
Correct.
1 1-bedroom unit.
Correct.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. St. Clair.
Across the street from there, there's a very large bar and restaurant, as you know, or high octane. And my question is going to be, is you going to have any type of soundproofing for your tenants there?
No,
Not at all.
no.
No fence?
Well,
wooden
maybe if I
fence?
put some trees or some shrubbery up, but that would be it.
And the reason I ask that is because you may be aware of the fact that we have other such venues around the weirs. And sometimes that becomes a real issue with some of the residents about noise from music and stuff. And the way the ordinances are now, they can have outside entertainment until 9 PM weekdays, and then till 10 o'clock on Friday and Saturday, unless they go in for a special permit for any big events that are coming up. And then you have Motorcycle Week, where outside entertainment can go until 12:30 AM, which with loudspeakers and stuff like that. So I mean, I have no problem with it, but I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. If
Oh, I
you're
am,
not,
I'm fully aware of
Okay,
the
because
noise
we-
situation up in that area.
all right, and so I'm sure the tenants will be made aware of that. Just so we don't have a lot of people screaming, I had no idea this noise was going to go and this is outrageous. And they come in,
Or we could do away with motorcycle.
you could, but you could, but that doesn't do the rest of the year when it's till 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And we had some people right down here on Church Street revamp some buildings. And they were most concerned about the noise next door from a very benign restaurant called the Brickfront. And the cars slamming doors and stuff like that. So this is just stuff that I've heard before here or at city
But
council.
that, like you
meetings.
said, that's just not happening up at the weirs.
No, it's not.
It's citywide,
That's correct.
nationwide.
That's correct.
So, I mean, it's an understandable that in that area, I'm gonna have a lot of noise and the tenants are gonna have to put up with it. or
That's
whatever.
all I wanted to hear. That's all. I just,
No, I understand. I know what I'm getting myself into.
no, not, well, you're not gonna be living there, right? Right.
No,
Right. So again, I just
He's
want,
much smarter than that.
he didn't mean that. I wanted just to be clear about that you were gonna be letting your tenants know that. That's,
yep, that's not a problem.
I think it's a great use for the property and I'm glad something's gonna be done with it. And as you know, we have a shortage of
Housing.
So I
Sure.
think that's a great use for it. So thank you.
Stacy.
I just wanted to tell you that we do love trees. In case you're interested in planting.
I have to surround the whole property with trees, the amount of noise that's in that area.
Trees are nice.
I like it.
That's right.
Do you envision this being, your tenants being year-round tenants?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's
Full-time housing,
great,
yes.
because we have a shortage in town, as you probably know.
Yeah, you just lost 17 of them someplace too, right?
Oh, yeah, my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Community Action Program sold 2 buildings for $1 million just so they could be torn down. And 18 apartments, apartments, all. Yes.
One more question.
Mr. McWilliams.
If I'm not mistaken, is there a rather large parking lot adjacent? to
It's
this,
6.6 acres that run right down Watson pretty much.
Yep.
I don't know the exact frontage number, but I think it's close to 11 or
Is it
1,200
currently
feet.
a parking, just a parking lot?
The back of it's a parking lot, and towards the right on there is a parking, but there's plenty of parking if you've seen the.
Oh, yeah, I did see that. I
There's
was
plenty
just,
of parking for 5
You don't
apartments.
own the adjacent lot or
I own down Watson, maybe 1,200 feet. So,
It's not all paved though. Some of it's.
no,
gravel,
no,
right?
it's
Yeah.
only, there's only a portion that's been
Yeah.
been paved.
So it's
Right, up
not.
close towards the Tamarack.
It's impervious surface, so. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
What's the plan for the rest of the property, Vince?
I have no plans right now, but that's subject to change at any time. I just like to get my foot in the door first.
Well, this looks like a good way to do it. It's very timely. All right, so I want to open the public hearing at 8:51. Are there any abutters or members of the public that wish to be heard regarding this application? Anybody out in Zoom land, Rob? We got to do something because our ratings are suffering terrible. Well, they did monetize it, didn't they? Isn't it a big source of revenue for the city? Okay.
Presume it's a big source of revenue. not
Yeah,
for us.
yeah.
If they were watching, they would be calling you and reserving.
Right, there you go. Okay, so I'll close the public hearing at 8:52. And I would entertain a motion from the board.
How about the staff? Do we want to hear from staff?
Oh, yeah. we
Yeah,
gotta
staff
hear.
recommends approval. Again, there's nothing unusual here that is of note and then has been already stated. We do have a need for year-round residents, particularly in that area. So that would be good.
Yep. All right, so staff's in favor of it. What is the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion on that, if that's
Okay.
okay. Make a motion to approve PL 2021-0122 SP 1065 Watson Road to change the property to multifamily with staff recommendations being enforced.
We have a motion by Mr. Sinclair. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Susie. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Sensing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Unanimous. Good luck.
Very much.
Thank you. How did these poor people get at the end of the list?
First come, first
I think
served.
we should adjourn, it's almost 9 o'clock.
You got 7 minutes.
Yeah, well, there was something about a Red Sox game too. All right, PL 2021-0, oh, wait a minute. Looking at the wrong one. PL 2017
Yes.
001 SP as amended, 609 Main Street Colonial Theater. Is the application in order and ready for acceptance?
Yes, it is.
Okay, then. We have a motion to accept these.
Make a motion to accept application PL 2017-001 SP Amendment 1, 609 Main Street.
Good morning. Okay, motion by the chief, seconded by Counselor. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, application's been accepted. And let's hear from the applicant.
All right. Rob Turpin.
Rooftop deck, that sounds
Yeah.
cool.
So Rob Turpin with Mishasha Turpin Architects here in town. One more time in front of you with one more thing with the theater complex. The developer of the 2 apartment floors is interested in constructing a small outdoor roof deck. And it would be located between the 2 main blocks of the theater, we call the Piscopo block, which is the front portion, and the theater proper, behind. So in this diagram here of the lot, the Piscopo block and the theater, it'd be this small hatched section right in here. So going to the larger plan, Episcopal block here, the theater back here, it'd be this zone here. What this is the new infill structure for the toilet rooms for the theater.
Right.
So this is a new construction with a new roof. There is some mechanical equipment up here already. And so because of that, there's already an existing door in the Episcopal block to come out onto this surface to service this equipment as well as some equipment on top of the Episcopal block roof.
Sounds like a great idea.
The roof deck would be for use of apartment owners, tenants, and their guests. As you can see, it's taking up just the kind of southerly third of the roof deck. So it gets the most sun and stuff and a bit of view if you get a little closer. There will be some height of kind of privacy fencing separating the deck from the mechanical equipment. There will be along the southerly edge of the roof deck, there will be some guardrails or some privacy fencing and vegetative plantings to kind of protect that edge. And so that's kind of the general intent.
What are the materials that you're gonna use for the deck?
We're
Composites?
still working through that with the contractor, the owner and the contractor. It will be a slightly built up deck. It will not be sitting on the membrane,
Right.
obviously. There is some roof drains there now, so it would be, that buildup would be high enough to go over the top of the roof drain. So 8 to 12 inches in height would probably be the buildup.
Yeah.
Through the TRC process, there were a few comments from that group. The comment regarding there will be no gas or solid fuel grills or fireplaces, that's agreed to by the developer. We are still exploring with the door hardware subcontractor the proper hardware for this door to make sure that that door is what would be considered free access. So if there's an emergency in the building, the people on the deck, they can easily get back through that door without the need of a key to get back in and
Gotcha.
exit out. So we're working on that right now with our door hardware subcontractor. We just talked briefly about the overlay construction over the membrane, which was item C here about that. This roof deck was the roof structure was engineered quite excessively because of the potential for snow, build up snow drifting and snow load in there. So any summer use of persons and the deck and furniture would be well below the design capacity for this roof. And then we will be working with Dean's office when the time comes to determine the occupant load for that building. So that'll come.
Sounds like a great idea. Any questions? Yes, Mr. St. Clair.
I have to be careful, don't I? Because I'm in a butter. Okay, I was
Well,
asking
maybe you
Dean, but I'll take your comments on that.
Be careful, but yeah,
Okay.
the normal,
Well, my first question is, will this be closed in the winter or open year round for use?
We're anticipating it would be closed just because of the nature
Of the winter?
the winter. Yeah.
Okay.
And the snow buildup and stuff, right? It will only, well, I would assume that there would be some level of snow removal to be able to get access to the mechanical. If mechanical equipment stuff would need to be served, repaired and stuff like that, but.
Okay, and I asked this because obviously I'm next door, but I would ask this anyway, because it is on the roof. So whether it was here or someplace, we don't have many rooftop activities in downtown Laconia in the buildings. And I think this is great because I think it's a potential use for a lot of rooftops around the city. So my question would be, you said that the floor is going to be elevated about 8 or 10 inches. There's a wall there between you and the property next door, the roof. I'm not sure how high it is. What will be done to let's say there's a thunderstorm that comes in with a lot of wind. Everybody's been out there. Is there some way to protect stuff from being blown up in the air, or is that just going to be the responsibility of saying, because I'm assuming you're gonna have chairs out there and stuff like that. So people would be responsible or have a place to put those for shelter if there's a bad windstorm coming up. I don't know if this stuff's gonna be left out there all the time in the summertime, or if it'll be secured or things like that.
Hang on one second. I really do think you should recuse if you're. an
No, no,
abutter.
I'm asking because this
You
is,
can ask as an abutter.
no, no, I'm asking because it could blow on.
No, I'm just saying, I want the record to
Okay. Oh,
show
you mean
that you
recuse-
have
Oh, yeah, that's
recused
fine. Yeah, that's fine.
from,
Yeah.
from the board so that you may
Okay. Well, those are just
ask
questions.
these questions as
Sure,
an
sure,
abutter. There
sure.
you go.
Maybe Rusty could.
Oh, we don't have to make Rusty come up here. do
Well,
we?
it's early.
I agree with you, but he should be the hell off.
He should actually be run out of town on a rail, I know, but,
Okay, I'll go for that.
okay, there you go.
We have a contractor who will be taking care of the building and taking care of chairs and that kind of thing. Doesn't mean that we might get caught in a thunderstorm, but that's my responsibility. It won't be the association's responsibility. if they mind. And, best we can.
Yeah, just stuff to think about.
There's also quite a height difference between even the deck layer and that roof. I mean, right now, currently, it's almost 2 stories. Even when you build it up, it's still gonna be a pretty decent.
So
Oh.
Charlie's roof, he has.
Not Charlie's roof, I'm talking the roof of your current 2 buildings. There's-
Oh, yeah.
No, that,
Charlie's roof is only probably.
Charlie's roof is close, but those 2 roofs that are
Going on
standing,
Canal Street or something
you know,
like
those
that.
are,
Yes.
those are like 3 roofs, really.
Yes, actually, there'll be quite a bit of, if anything blows northerly, it would run into the
Elevator.
privacy fence we're gonna
Yeah,
put up. And 2 is the big air handler that's there would also block, and then the elevator hoistway. So
There
there's
is
a
a
lot
big
of,
wall over
Yeah, I
there's a
don't
lot
think
of big
you-
wall, there's a lot of big things that could stop
Yeah.
anything going toward Canal Street.
Right.
Yeah.
He's promised me that they won't blow
there.
over. Right.
That was,
Get that in writing.
I was just gonna say, we can.
Put that in writing, yeah. All right, yes, Scott.
A quick question. If I recall, there will be a total of 9 units in this development. And the rooftop deck will be accessible to all 9 units.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to interpret the architectural drawing. Forgive
The
me.
door, the access out comes from the central kind of hall stair area.
There's a
right.
central stairway there right by
yeah,
that
right.
door.
Yes, so.
Can I ask why they can't have propane grills up there?
Fire code. You can't have, you can't be within that close to a multifamily building or non-single family, 2-family residential.
We didn't
So-
really argue it.
Yeah, they would all be, I mean, it's, yes, they're out there.
Okay.
But no, they're not allowed.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I figured it had something to do with that. All right. So, yes, Stacy.
On the west elevation, what I was looking at is over to near where there is, I understand there's a 42-inch high barrier, but it's just a 3-foot drop to the next roof.
Part of it, yeah. When you look at the plan. So on the plan, there's a single line we have drawn here, and there's a couple of keynotes on either side. So on the easterly side of this line is the higher roof, which is only 2 or 3 feet down. Then the to the west end of that line is the lower roof, which is maybe about 7 feet. So there's probably a 3, maybe 3 or 4 foot drop. So where that elevation drawing was shown was, well, here's, okay, those may be a little tough to see on the smaller
Well,
scale.
honestly, the one I was looking at was just literally, I was imagining myself up there and thinking, how stinking cool to just jump down and run across
Well, there may be,
the roof.
well,
Charlie's roof.
So I thought, if I thought that, then the likelihood of other people thinking,
Reason that we're putting in a hedge and a 4 foot, I think, right? Fence over that. So we've got a hedge and then a 4 foot fence. That's gonna keep anybody from falling over, but
but it's only 2 feet down there. So it's enough. We think it's enough to make people not want to try. and
You could
jump.
put your Batman costume on and jump right over.
Wouldn't that be?
It would be cool.
But we want to have it low enough that people can see the skyline.
Right, right, yeah.
And high enough that they're not gonna jump down except late at night and break it.
Sounds like,
This is what I'm picturing.
sounds like a great place for the planning board to have its annual dinner. Don't you think?
So maybe some barbed wire in the brush or the vegetation.
Okay, we've been here too long tonight. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, well, thank you. Any, I don't even know where we are. Did we have is the public hearing closed? We haven't opened it. Oh, dear me. 9:06 PM. Are there any members of the public or abutters here?
Oh, they love the idea.
Hello? Anybody online?
I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Rusty McClear.
Yes, indeed. I recognized you.
And no
Okay,
restrooms up there, right?
so they have to run into one of their apartments.
Go back to their apartment.
Put this over the wall.
That's the other
Over the
thing I
wall.
was thinking.
Water the hedges. Okay, guys.
Am I on live? I forgot about that. Sorry.
I'm gonna close the public hearing
Thank God.
at 9:07 PM. What does the staff have to say about this proposal?
Staff recommends approval. Do want to point out that the original conditions from the notice, from your approvals previous are still in effect.
Right.
All we're doing is amending the plan to add this deck. And to Charlie's point, I'm not aware of any other rooftop decks downtown, but I believe there's going to be one across the street from this when they
Sure, there'll be
redevelop
several
the
in the
Pamlico
next
building.
Several years.
There's gonna be one on the top level next to the penthouse of the building inlet on Elm Street, too. Penthouse, Rusty.
We have no
You guys
issues,
don't have a
obviously,
plan.
at building permit time.
On Elm Street. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
At building
the
permit
steel-
time, we'll be addressing the actual structure and fire code at that time. Occupancy limit, basically.
Okay. Anything else from the board?
Question for you.
Uh-huh.
Can I vote on this or am I not allowed? to
No,
vote?
I think you should recuse.
Okay.
But you've made your comments as an abutter and the record would show that.
Okay.
There's no sense in creating controversy. We have enough.
We discussed this.
Oh, my God. I don't think you're gonna have too much trouble
Okay.
with this one. So who would care to make the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve PL 2017-001 SP Amendment 1609 Main Street.
Conditions including no propane on the roof.
Yeah, with conditions that were already in the application.
Yep. Okay, is there a second to the chief's motion?
Second.
Second by Councilor Cheney.
Yep.
Any further discussion?
So I can't even make that a comment?
No.
Okay.
It's closed, man. You had your chance. All right. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Okay. Thank you very much for sticking around with us. I know you had probably better things to do, but.
By the way, one thing I heard you mention before that you would love to see the WOW trail, some energy. between
Yeah.
Laconia and your beach. Meredith is doing the same thing. We have a Greater Meredith program as our Main Street program. Started a part of the board to work with the town to see how we can get that done. And I had a meeting at the house the other day with Mr. Beadle and his wife. And we're gonna try and move that along. So we're matter of fact, I think I said in the newspaper the other day, in that meeting we had in the middle of town here, that, Meredith would do damn near anything to get that plow trail going.
Well, and in the south end too, you've got Belmont, Tilton. I don't know if you've been to Franklin lately, but they have converted the river as a recreational area right in downtown.
That's really.
And we could actually link up all to that, but there are technical problems with the Lakeport to the Weirs, expensive problems like
Railroad
getting
bridges.
around the trestles and things like that.
You should get from the Weirs to Meredith, but you can't get that first 100 feet across the road.
Well, I don't know, but I think it's possible that this might get tied in with our ideas for Hilliard Road. So.
Will that have sidewalk?
It could start, well, it would eventually, but I mean, it could start as a recreational trail and put the basic infrastructure in, water, as Bruce has talked about along there, and let it evolve as there's development interest.
Well, there's going to be, you're having problems, or rail trail as it is now is going to have problems with a large development on the smaller but still substantial development.
Right.
in our town too. So this may be a solution for the whole thing. Anyway, thank you very much for.
Thank you for coming. Good to see you.
Yeah, we'll put it in the paper that you voted again.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Quote him. All right. All right, so we have no application acceptances, new business? Old business?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know whether my issue is old business or new business, but I'd like to ask a question about enforcement, planning board enforcement of stuff.
Okay.
And if I can address it to Dean. Dean, I attended a neighborhood meeting of the Windermere something Ridge group. They are people up in that area
They
who
are
are
indeed.
who have water issues. Where is that? You know where Turner Road is? Turner Road?
Way.
Turner Way,
It's a development just off Parade Road
Oh,
before the
yeah,
big
yeah, yeah.
field.
just before Windermere Heights.
Yeah.
In the course of that discussion, they brought up, in fact, I think they gave me a copy of a letter from the planning department with regards to what they needed to do in certain circumstances. What concerned me was somewhere in that letter, and I don't remember who signed the letter, so I'm not even sure it was you, Dean, but it said something about the covenants, I think was what it was, that required each person to join the water system in there. And that those covenants would have to be dealt with. The reason that concerned me is I'm aware of other developments where there are covenants. And the covenants are not enforced. In fact, we give permits to develop a piece of property or add to a piece of property where the covenant says no additional buildings can be built. So I guess my question is which, and in fairness, I should tell you, I've had this from a couple of neighbors who are dealing with this. But at what point do their covenants become something we, the city, deals with, and what covenants don't we enforce?
We don't enforce any covenants. That is strictly a civil matter. But the covenants in this particular case that were presented at a time of original approval was part of the consideration of the planning board in making their approval, that this would be the condition of the development. And so therefore that was part of the decision-making process of the board. But once it gets developed, covenants could be changed. And if they are in violation, it would be the association versus an individual property owner,
Right.
or two property owners versus each other. We would not do enforcement of covenants.
Okay, I think that answers my question. My question revolves around a development where covenants were part of the original plan.
Right.
And then we've allowed additional buildings to put on property when their covenants don't include that. But if that's using the standard you just gave me, I feel better that we're not doing it one way here and another way there. Thank you for that.
When you talk about covenants now, are you talking about deed restrictions or association rules?
Essentially, all of those, enforcement of, say, an easement or some type of a deed restriction, covenant in that, the well-known thing on the internet is always, homeowners associations that ban, clotheslines or, outdoor play equipment or.
Oh, my
or
God. I know.
those kinds of things. Those are strictly the association versus the individual property owners.
Yeah, you remember when Southdown came down for the new boat racks?
Right.
We had 3 associations all in dispute over that.
Right.
So nightmare.
But when these things are presented to the board as part of the approval process, not that we're going to enforce them, but as I've said, this becomes part of the discussion process that you would have on individual applications, and then could be the deciding factor for an individual member, whether they're voting for or against. And in the case of the Turner Way folks, one of the conditions of approval was that there would be a community well as opposed to individual wells.
Right.
And the question of whether the community well is serving everyone's needs is certainly a valid question. But whether individuals should, if individuals drill their own well, whether that solves the problem or not, or it could
Or
very
force
well,
them to share that well. with others,
right, or it could exacerbate the problem.
But that's not our fight.
From a standpoint of, I believe, the community well versus individual wells, I believe that is our fight, because it was a condition of approval. It was an explicit condition of approval.
Oh, I see what you mean.
For that subdivision, that there would be a community well that everyone would be connected to.
That must have come from the original developer requesting that, though, right? Why would we do that?
It was a result.
I think it was the other way around, if I might.
Yeah.
I think the board required the developer to put in a
Community well.
It was
Rather than, and was it based on hydrogeology or?
It was.
It was.
A very extensive report.
Oh, okay.
And the conclusion was there were certain areas in that development that would not support wells, and there was an area that could support a community well for.
I can remember a dispute about a community well in the vicinity of the former Christmas Island. In the properties between the old restaurant and the lake. I don't know if any of them are still there, but there was a community well there, and there was a dispute after dispute.
Well, I think
we can put as a condition of approval that they adhere to all covenants or something like that, right? Or make it subject to covenants of record.
You can, but associations can change covenants, just as the condominium documents can change by a vote of the association. or
Oh, they
whatever.
can. Okay, so these are not deed restrictions you're talking about.
Correct.
It's like my old deed, the one I'm going back to the 1800s, says I can't, the owner of the property that I'm living on can't develop anything within 15 feet of the church property. So evidently, at some point, my theory is that the property was sold by the church, and that's where the
But that
deed
would,
restriction came from.
that would be enforceable by the church versus you.
Yeah, really, that's it is, because that passes with the deed to the new owners, those kind of covenants.
I think advising folks,
Yeah,
like in this case, that they should look at their deed restrictions or covenants or whatever. I think the difficulty in this particular case is I think the group thought the city was saying, we will enforce this covenant, and apparently you are. But I think clearly defining for people what the issues are,
right.
rather than wait until they get halfway, the rig's up and they're starting to pound a hole in the ground, saying, oh, wait a minute, you can't do it because. And frankly, it, from my perspective, reinforces my argument about water in the north quadrant.
Does a property owner have to get permission to put a well on an undeveloped lot?
No,
What about a septic?
not from us.
Okay, well, that's true.
However, they
Yes.
might need electricity to run the well, in which case they need a permit.
Gotcha.
Bruce, are they running out of water up at Turner?
Some
Way?
are, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the folks who live there have had a bad summer. I think they've had a couple of
Yeah.
bad summers.
Well, if it's one well and they're all sharing it, wouldn't everybody run out at the same time?
It's a pressure issue.
Water pressure, yeah.
So they probably need to maybe rebore the well to get better volume and then construct a tower of some sort or a cistern.
There
I don't know what the slopes are over there.
could be a number of
Pretty
different
steep.
solutions.
Yep,
Um,
but that's theirs to do. I mean,
Well, it's theirs to do in conjunction with, under the
CUP.
under the approvals that have been granted. Now, they could come back and try to get an amendment
Sure.
to that.
Well, I think enforcement is an issue we need to keep talking about too, because you made a comment earlier, enforcement usually comes from the neighbors. It seems to me that if we should try to come up with a way to ensure compliance with conditional use permits. I mean, look at the situation that Anthony dropped on our laps, where he hadn't, he had a prior approval and they hadn't complied with any of it. We had no way of knowing that until somebody brought it to our attention. I don't know if it's a staffing issue or what it is, but
There's no question it's a staffing issue. They're busy enough down there. I mean, I've stood in the line there waiting to see somebody free, and I'm not complaining.
Right.
I'm just saying that they're busy.
well, I mean, inspections are done by fire, code enforcement, those kinds of things. But we sometimes spend hours working on a conditional use permit, public hearing, conditional use permit, minute details, some of them as a result of public comment, and then we're done with it. And rarely does it ever come back to us unless, there's a lot of complaints. And it doesn't get to their attention either.
Yeah.
The plans get filed with the registry and the approvals are a matter of record and that's it. So somebody wants to come along and try to bring it to our attention. We could do better than that.
One last part of that, Dean, there was some notation in there about requiring a new geological study. My words, not the letters.
Yeah, I don't think I said required. I think I suggested that they do one. Again, going back to the individual well versus the common well. If someone just goes and drills in an area that was earlier identified as not likely to produce water, that's not going to help them any. They're going to spend thousands of dollars and maybe get nothing. On the other hand, if the association in itself spent several $1,000s spread over the association and did an additional well or an improved well, that maybe that solves the problem. But it's not within my expertise to be able to figure that out. You know, they're gonna have to do some type of
I
a
got-
study to do that.
Sometimes well drillers go back and they have to add some depth to the existing wells in order to tap into the aquifer. Depends on the subsurface geology. So, all right. Is there any other business, monkey business or otherwise?
You have number 15, which is the extension policy review.
Oh, yes. 15. Oh, I saw it. Oh, there it is.
Just while you're kind of reviewing that, I would like two things. One, I think it's probably appropriate for us to review this, and maybe we all just take this home and look at it, and we put it on the agenda for next month. But I do want to assure you that if a person came in for an extension for a project that some of the things that are mentioned in here had changed, we certainly would bring that to your attention. If that were the case. In the case of the one extension we had tonight, there is really nothing that's changed up in that neighborhood since the
My
original.
suggestion would be to change the form to a bunch of check boxes and ask them to check the ones that apply.
We could do that.
You
We could do
know,
that.
because that way it doesn't require a sort of a conference with the planner. It's just, here's the form, take it home, fill it out, bring it back to us. We'll tell you if it works or not.
Right. I mean, the extension of that is, I think I can say that we share your frustration sometimes on some of these, approved applications that we have that are here for their 7th or 8th or whatever extension.
Have a far
and,
less problem with it than my predecessor.
and and I think that's just part of the discussion that you have.
Yeah.
I don't think sitting here saying, or not me saying, but the board saying, we're only going to grant 2 extensions and that's it, is probably arbitrary and probably not productive because there are extenuating circumstances at time.
Sure.
But on the other hand, I mean, we do have a couple of regular extensions here where not necessarily this year, but in previous years,
Fred Clausen.
Yeah, it would be a very good case in point, but we're waiting for the market to turn or whatever. Well, we've been in a really strong market for at least 3 years now, and it's been crazy strong.
But the cost of building materials has gone through the roof.
Yes.
As the
there's all those
gentleman
things.
from the Weirs with the campground told us, right? He said, we moved up here, retired. We wanted to do this improvement to the property and now we can't afford to do it. And Mr. Clausen, if I remember correctly, he was just waiting for the market to get hot enough for him to make the numbers work.
Right, and if we waited another year, he would have made even more money, but but anyway, yeah, so I mean.
Not that this board discouraged him in any way.
I mean, we do have, and I don't want to mention any projects because, you're on your own, but.
I know.
We've had a couple of projects that are just treading water and if they're not building during this market, they're crazy,
I know. All right, so is there any other business?
We're going to put this on the next month's.
Yeah, oh, yes, that's true.
Okay.
Why don't we just table that for next month and we'll review it and have some ideas. I think just off the top of my head, I think that the key is to just provide the applicant with a copy of the rule as we may modify it and rules, and then have a form that they have to fill out that tracks the permitted reasons, and then they can write anything they want under other and.
Okay, we'll work up
Something like that.
We'll work up a checklist for that. Sure.
Yeah, because that sort of makes it possible if somebody just comes in, you know, when you're minimally staffed, they, you take this form and fill it out and bring it back.
Okay.
Anyone else? What do you think we should do, Scott?
I think we should adjourn.
What
I
an excellent
move we
idea.
adjourn.
Motion made and seconded by the chief. Is there any discussion? No, there isn't. All in favor, raise your hands and say, yeah. Okay, we done.